Chapter 343. In Riverside Palace, Yang Guang stood with his hands behind his back, facing the surging river alone. There was a rock bobbing up and down in the water. When the river water slapped against the rock, it created huge waves that whistled through the air. In Yang Guang's ears, the black heavenly demonic rock was like a deep and endless universe. When it vibrated on the outside, it reverberated with the surging sound of the heavenly river. Yang Guang was in a divine state. His spirit turned into the primordial demon, sitting in the stone as if he was sitting at the center of the universe. The water vapor of the Yangtze River drilled into the heavenly demonic stone's apertures, turning into a long river under the primordial demon's knees. It rolled over with a monstrous momentum, crashing against the shore and rolling up 1,000 piles of snow. The primordial demon caught the long river like a snake, wrapping it around his body. Demonic chi and the long river breathed together, and in the heavenly demon's hands, it was integrated into his monstrous momentum, dancing along with the heavenly demon's breathing. Finally, the water essence of the long river drilled out of the heavenly demonic stone and seeped into Yang Guang's heavenly demon aura. In this alternative state, Yang Guang seemed to become one with the Yangtze River. As the vital energy surged in his body, the sound of the rolling waves could be heard. For the first time, the heavenly demon's vital energy showed the characteristics of water. It was continuous and not used frequently. It wasn't until the sun was setting that Yang Guang came back to his senses and sighed. The demonic stone is indeed the embryonic form of the mysterious universe. Driven by the force of nature, the remnants of the Book of the Chaos inside can evolve all kinds of natural images and affect the origin energy of nature. Unfortunately, the heavenly demonic power and the Book of the Chaos are incompatible, so I can only borrow the essence of martial arts. The moment my original body arrived from beyond the heavens, I broke into the river of time and forcefully covered the entire timeline with the existence of the heavenly demonic stone, tracing it back to ancient times, all for the sake of giving it a reasonable birth. Under the cover of the mysterious universe, who can find the deity's true body inside? No matter how the deity examines it, it is the manifestation of a primitive universe image. Sealed within it is a cold demonic consciousness. Even if we trace it back to its source, it is just a meteorite that fell from the sky. Next, I'll send it to the Overgod's space. Yang Guang waved his hand, and the heavenly demonic chi wrapped around the heavenly demonic stone returned to his palm. The divine sense that enveloped the entire Jiangdu sensed a few figures that did not fit in with this world. Yang Guang immediately smiled. His voice traveled hundreds of meters away and reached the ears of the eunuchs who were waiting by the river. Get me some local chefs of Jiangdu. I want to try the delicacies of Jiangdu. Yes, Your Majesty. Lu Jin accepted the order and retreated. At this time, in Jiangdu City, the disguised samsara travelers were mixed in with the crowd and stepped into a restaurant. When the rookies passed by Jiangdu city gates, they marveled at the bustling and spectacular city. It's indeed a 300-foot city wall. The prosperity here was not inferior to some modern small cities. Is this still the ancient society? This is the world of twin of brothers. But it looks quite prosperous. Is it really an era where the people have no way to make a living after Yang Guang ascended the throne? The man in the Taoist robe saw that the behavior of the rookies was out of place and attracted the attention of the people around him. He called for a room and brought everyone in. Listen up, rookies. The plot world is very dangerous. Although we, the Wind Chasers, are not breeders, we are not some Virgin Mary team either. We are not your nannies. There is no reason for us to take care of you. If you want to survive in this world, you have to show your value and talent. At least, you have to show us that you have the potential to be nurtured. Therefore, you have two choices. One is to enter the nourishment chamber and hand over 80% of your income when you return. The other is to take a loan from me to strengthen yourself and listen to my instructions. The veterans in the other room watched the reactions of the rookies calmly and selected suitable target. The one with glasses is not bad. He is quite calm. He can be tested and supported into our second team. The captain of the squad, Luli, considered. Now, other than the characters in the plot world, it is not suitable for our team to directly select rookies to join. It is time to consider nurturing a second team. After all, they will be our source of blood transfusions in the future. Now, which high-star team doesn't have a bunch of second-generation reincarnators? When we fought our way up from the bottom, we hated those second-generation reincarnators the most. With the blood transfusions from the higher-ups, each of them has a pile of life-saving items. We can absorb the best rookies and challenge the stronger ones. This is all for later, Captain Luli said. The most important thing now is how to get close to Yang Guang and gain his trust. Yang Guang is very suspicious. If we want to gain his trust, it will not be as easy as with the twin dragons. My opinion is to collect information first and contact him carefully. If we do the wrong thing, our plan to approach the source of the mutation, Great Sky Demon, may be negatively affected, Luo Xian replied. If it is Jiang Capital, there is a storyline character that we must pay attention to, Luo Xian said. Is it Wei Zhenzhen? The captain asked. Yes, there is also Old Feng. We can't ignore this. How did Old Feng die? He was executed by Yang Guang. He was recruited as Yang Guang's chef. A chef of the lowest level was actually executed by the emperor. There must be a side quest in this. The half-elf suddenly thought of this. Wei Zhenzhen meeting Yuan Huaji is also a problem. This is probably the side quest of Yuan Huaji and Yang Guang's conflict. I suggest we pay attention to this. The half-elf suggested. Zhang Zhongheng, think of a way to get information about this world. Your enhancement type is quite different from this world. This world's resistance to magic should be quite weak. You can use charm to get basic information about this world, but you can't abuse it. Otherwise, the world will reject you. The captain ordered the half-elf. You can't charm the martial artists in this world, Luo Xian emphasized. The martial arts in Tang Dynasty place a lot of emphasis on spirit. Don't overdo it, Luo Heng. The captain turned around and ordered the bow-wielding man, you keep an eye on Wei Zhenzhen. Luo Xian, I'll go and play tricks. Luo Xian blinked and said playfully, the fairy of Ci Hang Jingzhai is coming out. The captain sighed. Before we use the equipment for group battle, we should quickly divide our forces and complete the formation. If we wait until the group battle starts, we will be seeking death. There seems to be Du Fui's army next to Jiang Capital. It would be best if someone could go and subdue them. At least we need to nail down a nail. Chapter 344. The half-elf Zhang Zhongheng walked out of the restaurant. The sky had just fallen and the streets were lit with candles. Although the pedestrians weren't as busy as during the day, it was still lively. He could even hear the drunken voices of the customers walking past him. His Majesty has arrived at Jiangdu and lifted the alcohol ban and curfew. That's why the brothels in the city dare to open at night. We're going to have a good time today. Sigh. Come. So Yang Guang has already arrived at Jiangdu. Zhang Zhongheng thought to himself. I should have directly controlled an official to search for information, but this time the captain wants us to be more cautious. It's better not to touch the officials first. It's better to find the local gangsters first. Regardless of the time, the local gangs were always the most well-informed people. The rats that lived in the lower levels of the city would always be the first to notice the slightest movement. Zhang Zhongheng wanted to find these people, or at the very least, their small leaders. On the bluestone street under the night sky, only the brothels on both sides were brightly lit. A few well-dressed businessmen laughed loudly as they walked past Zhang Zhongheng. The pimp at the door immediately greeted them with a smile, but Zhang Zhongheng's attention wasn't on them at all. He hid in the shadows at the side and stared at some well-dressed men standing in the corner with their arms crossed. They were dressed in clean clothes, some of them even bared their chests. Their eyes swept across the passers-by, cold and alert. Only Zhang Zhongheng, this kind of observant person, would notice the bamboo branch pattern embroidered on the front of their heavily worn clothes. Most of the men here only had one or two. This represented Yangzhou's local bully, the symbol of the bamboo flower gang. Under the leader of the bamboo flower gang, there was a military advisor, followed by the 4 halls of wind, clear, rain, and dew, which led the branch leaders, incense masters, and the gang members. Their status was determined by the bamboo on their lapels. The gang leader had 10 bamboos, and the gang members at the bottom had 1 bamboo. Once every 3 years, the bamboo forest assembly would be held to discuss the important matters of the gang, as well as the promotion and punishment of the hall leaders and branch leaders. Zhang Zhongheng looked at the greedy and cold eyes of these people, and suddenly laughed. A moment later, Zhang Zhongheng, who was dressed like a rich young master, came out from the shadows. He deliberately acted as if he had just come out from a brothel and could not even stand steadily. He staggered to the side alley as if he needed to go to the toilet. Sure enough, 2 men immediately followed him into the alley with gleaming eyes. They harbored malicious intentions. When the 2 of them disappeared from everyone's sight and entered the dark and secluded alley, a hand grabbed their necks and pulled them deeper into the alley. Zhang Zhongheng pulled out an arrow and pressed the sharp arrowhead against their throat. The cold aura of death directly tore apart the 2 unlucky fellows' intention to resist. Zhang Zhongheng's palm landed on the back of one of the unlucky fellow's neck, knocking him unconscious. Zhang Zhongheng increased the force in his hand that was holding the arrow. The fine steel arrowhead cut open the man's skin, stinging his nerve. I ask, you answer. I'll wake the person on the ground later. If there's anything wrong, I'll take your life. Yes, yes, yes. Hero, please spare my life. You're from the bamboo flower gang? Which hall? Zhang Zhongheng asked. This lowly one is called Wang Yongdeng. I'm Wind Hall's Lord Xiao's subordinate. Where are the 4 halls of the bamboo flower gang in charge of? Hero, I only know that our Wind Hall is mainly responsible for surveillance, gathering information, and drawing water from the shops in the west of the city. The Rain Hall seems to have someone in charge of enforcing the family law. I really don't know anything else. Hero, where is the Wind Hall's hall? It's... Seeing the hesitation on Wang Yongdong's face, Zhang Zhongheng's face turned cold. His other empty hand reached out and grabbed Wang Yongdong's right hand that was hidden behind his back. With a light twist, he broke it. Wang Yongdong's mournful cry was blocked by Zhang Zhongheng's stomach. His face was deathly pale and he was sweating profusely from the pain. He whimpered and waited for the pain to subside. Zhang Zhongheng once again ruthlessly twisted his hand. This time, he was in so much pain that his eyes stared blankly and he fell into a state of dizziness. When Zhang Zhongheng asked again, he answered everything. Zhang Zhongheng noted down the address and the facial features and habits of the branch masters of the Wind Hall. Then he continued to ask, "What's the most important thing in Jianghu right now? Do you have any news about Yuan Wenji looking for those 2 boys in Jiangdu? And where is Yang Guang?" The most important news in Jianghu right now is about He's Jade. It's said that the secret of longevity, Eunuch Yang's treasury, and He's Jade are all in the hands of Kuozhong and Su Jiling. They call themselves the Yangzhou Twin Dragons. They are the people General Yuan is looking for. But General Yuan has been executed by His Majesty. Now both sides are looking for them. No matter who finds them, they will have the world's most powerful martial art manuals, the most important wealth, and the most important power. Whether they take the secret and He's Jade to the imperial court or hand it over to the rebel army, they will become heroes in one go. Recently, our clan master ordered that whoever has news about the twin dragons can be promoted to branch master directly if they report to the clan master. If the branch master has news, he will be promoted to branch master directly. So, all the brothers are looking for them. and His Majesty is now in Jiangdu. It is said that he is staying in Linjiang Palace. I really don't know anything else. Zhang Zhongheng continued to interrogate him for other questions. In the end, he controlled his mind and checked the previous questions. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he broke the man's neck and woke up the other unlucky man. After asking a few questions that the other man did not know, Zhang Zhongheng manipulated the plants and buried their bodies. Seeing the twisted willow roots wrapping the two bodies and burrowing into the ground, Zhang Zhongheng demonstrated the traces on the ground and left the alley. The entrance of the Wind Hall was located in a relatively remote alley. Several strong men in black were monitoring the entrance and the end of the alley. It seemed to be empty, but in fact it was secretly heavily guarded. It was difficult to sneak in easily. But this was only for ordinary people. For samsara travelers, this was no different from an unguarded door. The entrance of the hall was a place for important people to rest. Outside the door, there were more than a dozen men with excellent martial arts guarding. Zhang Zhongheng pushed the door open. The man in black next to him let him in as if he didn't see him. This was a very exquisite small courtyard with a small bridge and flowing water. It was full of fun, but Zhang Zhongheng felt a trace of unusual movement, as if someone was standing next to him. He took out the short knife in his hand and walked quietly. But he heard a chuckle. Interesting little thing. Zhang Zhongheng jumped into the shadow next to him. He looked in the direction of the sound and only saw a young and handsome man with a pale face and no beard playing with a thin knife in his hand. The man's voice was feminine. He smiled at him and said, "You can't be thinking that Jiangdu is under the control of the emperor, so you can easily sneak in." Chapter 345. Zhang Zhongheng raised his head in surprise and asked, "Who did you say you were?" But he only heard the man's chuckle, and in an instant, a blade light swept out from Yu Huatian's right hand, a short and narrow blade with unfathomable sharpness. The distance of several feet between the two of them was crossed in an instant, not giving Zhang Zhongheng any time to react. The short blade in his right hand hurriedly met the blade, and Zhang Zhongheng's figure quickly retreated, wanting to escape from the sharpness of this blade. Ever since entering the main god's space, Zhang Zhongheng could be said to have experienced hundreds of battles. Whether it was his on-the-spot reactions or his judgment, they were extremely accurate. As soon as the saber light appeared, he knew that he couldn't block it. Neither his defensive tools nor his defensive skills could block it. The short knife and the thin knife clashed, like lightning streaking across the night sky. Zhang Zhongheng felt an incomparably dangerous aura as if it had discovered his flaw. At the same time, his right hand trembled violently, almost unable to hold onto the dagger in his hand. The sharp killing intent caused his hair to stand on end. F***CK. We've already weathered so many storms and waves, but we're actually going to capsize in this easy ditch. Zhang Zhongheng roared in his heart. Zhang Zhongheng's eyes glowed with a faint blue light. At this critical moment, Zhang Zhongheng couldn't care less about Luo Xian's warning and used his own mental power. An invisible mental wave rushed towards Yu Huatian through his eyes, causing the thin blade in his hand to slightly pause. Bloodthirst. Zhang Zhongheng let out a furious roar as his entire body glowed with a tyrannical bloody light. At this time, the originally delicate and slender half-elf's muscles bulged like iron, and his veins popped out. It was as if he had transformed into a ferocious beast, and the dagger in his hand was like the fangs of a ferocious beast, madly biting forward. Under Zhang Zhongheng's mental impact, Yu Huatian was only dazed for an instant before his martial will was like blade light, slashing out all the external factors that were affecting his will. Facing Zhang Zhongheng's crazy counterattack, Yu Huatian's battle intent also rose to a new height, but his mind became more and more clear. The thin blade in his hand was like flowing water, reflecting the moonlight in the sky. In the pitch-black night, his mind was like the ancient bright moon in the vast sky, above the clouds, cold, clear, reflecting the blade light flowing in his hand. The bright moon on the saber, the bright moon in his heart, and the bright moon in the sky suddenly became one. It splashed towards the ferocious beast. The blade aura was like the moonlight, penetrating through every opening. His movement technique was like a reflection in a well, like the reflection of the moon in the water. The fangs in Zhang Zhongheng's hands were unable to lock onto his aura, and the slash that was filled with blood and violence clashed with Yu Huatian's thin blade countless times. The moonlight became more and more agile, and the thin knife became more and more skillful. Only Zhang Zhongheng's struggles gradually became weaker. There was less and less space for him to counterattack, and less opportunities for him to take the initiative. In just 2 breaths of time, there was less than an instant left for him to counterattack. It seemed like he could only passively defend, allowing Yu Huatian's saber light to move freely, reflecting the bright moon in his heart in his eyes. Zhang Zhongheng was forced to activate the special effect of the dagger. The dagger seemed to be shrouded in a black fog, and it carried a thick, dizzying smell of blood. It turned into many illusions in his hands, as if there were 8 daggers swinging at him at the same time. The cold, soul-like illusions in the black fog let out shrill screams that shocked people's minds. Vampire daggers strengthened special effect. Banshee's howl. Zhang Zhongheng was prepared to seize the opportunity that Banshee's howl had bought him, but he only saw Yu Huatian's eyes as clear as the mouth of a well, carrying a penetrating, cold, and almost absolutely calm martial will. As the blade aura in his hands flashed, the reflected blade aura in Yu Huatian's eyes slashed away the distracting thoughts caused by Banshee's howl. The blade slashes the physical body, the heart slashes away all distracting thoughts. I hate martial arts experts. It was only now that Zhang Zhongheng remembered Luo Xian's reminder. Although martial arts experts did not have the superb spiritual cultivation of the Buddhist Vajra body, clear glass body, or 8 lands motionless body, but in the process of battle, their will would be highly focused, and their spirit would be in sync with their martial arts. It was very rare for them to be affected by mental attacks. On the contrary, if one tried to use mental attacks to affect those true martial arts experts, it would only result in the backlash of failure, allowing them to seize the opportunity. Illusory sound technique, controlling light, concealing thoughts. Zhang Zhongheng used the casting tools to activate these 3 crucial low-level spells. At the same time, he cast true vision on himself, using psionic energy to enlighten his thoughts and attain a godly state. Sound, light, and mental obstruction were completely unable to mislead Yu Huatian. His martial will had locked onto Zhang Zhongheng's real body, and all disturbances were unable to distort this reality. Because of the distraction, Zhang Zhongheng's resistance had already reached an extremely dangerous state. The sharp blade that was like the moonlight was only a tiny opening away from his vitals. It was only then that Zhang Zhongheng deeply understood the meaning behind Luo Xian's warning. The martial arts experts in the storyline world were different from those who had been strengthened in the creator space. They had true enlightenment, and they had experienced countless battles and the forging of time, forging absolute martial will. Compared to them, the mind and will that had been strengthened by psionic energy were like rough and loose boulders. Those with wills that were like tofu could naturally be crushed. However, if they were to encounter those sharp, firm, and unyielding steel longswords, even if they were to control the huge boulders weighing 1,000 jin to go up against them, it would still be an extremely dangerous thing. In the hands of psionic warlocks, there were all sorts of unpredictable changes. They could control the opponent's mind at any time, affect the opponent's judgment, and were even more dangerous than the strengthening of martial arts in close combat. If they were to encounter a martial will that had been honed, tempered, and forged countless times, it would be a bloody battle where they had no advantage at all. There's not much time left. If this goes on, I won't even have the chance to escape. As time passed, Zhang Zhongheng, who appeared to be expressionless, felt extremely shocked and anxious. Although he did not know if this Yu Huatian was the Yu Huatian he knew, in terms of martial arts, He was at least 100 times more ruthless than the Western Depot superintendent in his memories. In Dragon Gate flying armor, Yu Huatian was at most a 4-star, but this one is at least a 6-star pinnacle. This is Yu Huatian? Even Invincible East is not as ruthless as him. The Green Dawn version of Invincible East is only stronger than him by 1 star. What's going on with this world? Why did even Yu Huatian come out? And shouldn't he be using a sword? Why is his saber technique so fierce? This doesn't make sense. Zhang Zhongheng roared in his heart, but the situation in his hands became even more dangerous. Master-level cold weapon mastery he refined was full of openings under Yu Huatian's saber technique. Even he did not expect that there would be so many openings and weaknesses. The thin saber in Yu Huatian's hands moved about at will, and he could always move about with ease through the defenses that Zhang Zhongheng believed were impenetrable. Yu Huatian could easily cut through the defenses that Zhang Zhongheng believed were impenetrable, and he could easily tear apart the defenses that Zhang Zhongheng tried to protect tightly. If it were not for the fact that reincarnators had a lot of items and a variety of methods, Zhang Zhongheng did not doubt that the narrow thin saber would have cut through his 6-yang chief a long time ago. The most terrifying thing was Yu Huatian's body movements. No matter how hard Zhang Zhongheng tried and how many spirit energy methods he used, he could not lock down on Yu Huatian's presence. It was as if he did not exist in this world. If Shi Zixuan or Master Empty Zen were here, they might be able to recognize this philosophical reasoning that was almost the same as immortal seals. But to Zhang Zhongheng, who did not understand the seamless saber technique at all, being unable to lock down on Yu Huatian's aura practically made him lose most of his methods. This was also why he was always at a disadvantage. Yu Huatian's martial arts restrained him too much, and even if he had a lot of methods, he could not bring out even half of them. Super form transformation, haunted by vengeful spirits. Zhang Zhongheng shouted and slid forward. With bloodlust, his iron-like arms suddenly swelled up again. He closed his hands around the short saber and swung it down with a howl. At the same time, he activated the only close-range skill he had, Kasaya Slash. The sharp saber chi sliced through the air and went straight for Yu Huatian's chest. But when the thin saber cut into the vital part of Yu Huatian's chi, it was completely destroyed. Zhang Zhongheng widened his eyes in disbelief, and he roared in his heart, "You think a 5-star bronze technique is a normal attack? This is 2F** king much." But shock could not replace reality. Just as Yu Huatian was about to pull back his saber and cut Zhang Zhongheng in half, the black fog on the vampire dagger in his right hand left his body and pounced on Yu Huatian's face. But as the saber flashed, it was completely destroyed. You can even cut negative energy like haunted by vengeful spirits? Chapter 346. Zhang Zhongheng was finally awakened by the strong smell of medicine. When he opened his eyes and saw his teammates, he relaxed and collapsed on the bed. Omega, after this trip, I'm pretty much useless. Zhang Zhongheng changed his lying position so that he could see his teammates' faces. He closed his hands and wiped his face to clear his mind. He took a steaming hot cup of tea from the kettle beside him and took a sip before saying softly, "I almost couldn't make it back today. 6 damn eunuchs were after me. There were also countless monsters. In order not to drag you guys down, I took a detour outside the city and almost got myself killed." "What happened?" Luo Xian asked him seriously. "You guys are right, this world is deep." Zhang Zhongheng was still scared when he recalled, Yu Huatian and Lu Jin? Or Chao Huachun. Either way, they're all 5-star eunuchs chasing after me. I'm scared when I see eunuchs now. 1 eunuch is a 5-star pinnacle martial artist, 2 eunuchs together are comparable to 6 stars. We've underestimated Yang Guang. Yang Guang is definitely more terrifying than we thought. You guys can't imagine how terrifying his group of eunuchs are. The Sunflower Treasure is a widely recognized 4-star martial art. It can help a martial artist reach 4 stars in the shortest time. Although the price is a little high, the samsara realm can make up for it. It's just that the price is 100 times the price of a 4-star martial art. It's not worth it, but it's different in the storyline world. Do you think this Yang Guang is also a reincarnator? He used a martial art similar to the Sunflower Treasure to train experts in batches and dominate this storyline world. The Taoist-robed male lead's imagination went wild. Impossible. Luo Xian rejected his idea and explained, "We've tried the gold-grade item that causes group battles in advance. Yang Guang's identity in God's realm is indeed a reincarnator, otherwise the realm would have notified us. And that Yu Huatian isn't fake either." Zhang Zhongheng also raised an objection. He recalled and said, "I've fought with Yu Huatian face to face. You should know that the moves of martial arts experts are highly synchronized with their spirit. From the feeling of his moves, it is indeed very similar to Yu Huatian, just that he is stronger, more ruthless, and more ruthless. He's definitely not someone that any eunuch can impersonate." Other than Zhang Zhongheng, no one else had ever seen Yu Huatian, so all their guesses were just guesses. Although this name vaguely explained something, there was a layer of fog separating them, making it impossible to see clearly, instead causing their thoughts to become chaotic once again. Captain Luli pondered for a moment, then raised her head and asked, "Zhongheng, can you compare Yu Huatian's level among samsara travelers? At the very least, they are the most dangerous group among the 5-star martial artists." Zhang Zhongheng recalled and said, "His spiritual will is extremely firm. Although he doesn't have a very high realm, he is definitely at the peak of the current star level in terms of martial arts mentality. He can almost touch the 6-star level in battle. He has a saber technique that is at least a 5-star silver level saber technique and a 6-star silver level chi cultivation technique. As for his chi, it's very similar to Sunflower Manual, but it's also purine. Most of the veterans among us can only be on par with him in terms of strength, but even the stronger 6-star martial artists can't crush him. He's the type of person who stands at the peak because he's very tenacious and he's very difficult to deal with." When they heard Zhang Zhongheng's analysis, most of the veterans sank into silence. It was only now that they truly understood the true meaning behind the words, "The water runs deep" and "the world with mutated plots." They understood the fatal danger hidden under the surface. The eunuchs under Yang Guang had already reached the peak of 5-star martial artists, and it was not just 1 or 2 of them. This time, there were already 6 of them who came out to kill Zhang Zhongheng. Then, were there stronger people above them? 6-star martial artists? 7-star martial artists? How strong was Yang Guang himself? How strong was the twin dragons who stood against Yang Guang? Most of the veterans were only at the level of 5-star martial artists, let alone the newbies. If they led a group fight and the plot went berserk, how many people would be able to survive? No one could guarantee that. 6 5-star martial artists at the peak of 5-star martial artists. It was more than enough to kill Shi Zhishuan. How did the revolutionary army of this world survive? Where did the rain field and the heavenly demonic power come from? Luo Xian sighed. Perhaps our best decision is to join Yang Guang's side. I keep feeling that even the Lord God doesn't know the ins and outs of Yang Guang's side. How is that possible? Let alone 8-star martial artists, even 10-star martial artists, or even 11-star martial artists can't get rid of the Lord God's control. How could there be something that even the Lord God can't control in a mere Tang dynasty? The man in the Taoist robe shook his head. "I want to meet Yang Guang," Luo Xian suddenly said. "If we don't have direct first-hand information, no matter how detailed our investigation of Yang Guang is, there may be serious deviations. If we want to get to the truth, we can only start with Yang Guang." "No, it's too dangerous," the captain rejected. "Without enough foreshadowing, it's too dangerous to come into contact with this kind of unpredictable powerhouse who isn't directly under our camp. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to rescue him in time. Especially this kind of villain plot character. Yang Guang seems to be the ultimate boss. But there are enough benefits for us to take this risk. Luo Xian explained. If it's too dangerous, I'd rather give up on the hidden plot reward of the source of the mutation. The captain replied. Luo Xian shook his head. It's not the source of the mutation, it's Yang Guang. Yang Guang himself is a huge benefit. If we start a team battle in advance, then we can use the strange power of this world to scheme against the opponent. If we can use this to get through the team battle, that will be our greatest benefit. A mutated plot world like this is a crisis, but it's also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As far as I know, not many people have encountered a mutated plot of this level. In Linjiang Palace, Yang Guang looked at a piece of granite presented by a chamberlain. It was like bright flesh and blood, showing the tissue structure of the flesh and blood under the skin, but the texture was solid granite. True qi seeped into this strange rock, and the texture, structure, and even a strange fluctuation appeared in Yang Guang's mind. This is what you took from that mysterious person? Yang Guang asked Yu Huatian, who was kneeling on the steps. Yu Huatian replied, "Reporting to your majesty, that person is very strange. When this servant's saber cut his body, it felt like it was flesh and blood, but when the saber hit him, it turned into a piece of rock. I only managed to cut 2 cun deep. This is it." Yang Guang laughed. Interesting. He flicked his sleeves and walked into the palace without looking back. Chapter 347. Zhang Xiaofeng and Luo Xian stood on the bank of the Yangtze River, looking at the Eastern Peak ship in the middle of the river. That was the cargo ship of the Eastern Peak sect. In the past few days, they had used various methods to obtain information that shocked even themselves. The famous East and West Depot, and those dazzling names, had completely dispelled the reincarnation team's plan to infiltrate the palace and wait for an opportunity to meet Yang Guang. They had also stopped playing dirty. The reputation of the East and West depots was simply too shocking. In that case, not only did they have to bribe Yu Shiji, they also needed to establish a relationship with him. In that case, according to the plot, the Eastern Peak sect's account book is the only thing we have confidence in meeting Yang Guang. It's worth at least a bronze item card, so we have to come and fight for the job with the two main characters. Luo Xian sat barefoot on the bank of the river, lightly tapping the water with his feet as he said with a smile. Zhang Xiaofeng hesitated. With the current situation of the twin dragons, I don't think they need the account book anymore. Yuanhua is dead. But according to our information, they really are up there. Luo Xian pointed at the big ship on the river. The Eastern Peak sect is a big arms dealer. Yang Guang doesn't need them, but there are people who want to control them. For example, those who want to rebel but lack weapons, so the twin dragons are probably being used again. They're the main characters. Their biggest value is being used. This time, we have to get familiar with them and lay a foreshadowing. The two waited until the moon was high in the sky and the surroundings were dark. Then, they rowed the small boat to the center of the river. This was a very prosperous waterway. Even at night, it was still brightly lit. Close to the shore, there were crickets and needles and boat. Luo Xian stood at the bow of the boat, listening to the singing of fishermen in the night. In his eyes, there were stars in the sky, and the beautiful scenery of the Milky Way. The water rustled on the bow of the boat. Everything was like a dream. Luo Xian sang softly, living at the head of the Wuchu River, a small boat amidst the waves. Let the north and the south roam with the east and west, without tiredness or worry, the heavens can't keep us. Last year on this day, Lanjiang Ferry, today Xiangpu is also Baikyu, let us forget our worries. See red catnip, Xiangjiang, autumn on both sides. Wearing a bamboo hat, wearing a green raincoat, with a long silk rod in hand, there is no need to be restrained, no need to worry. The clear voice echoed on the river, startling Zhang Xiaofeng who was on the boat. He wanted to stop it, but it was too late. The song echoed in the middle of the empty river, and even the sound of the rushing water could not drown it out. In the distance, there was a slight commotion on the Dongming Sec's ship. Someone shone a lantern in their direction. The dazzling whale candlelight illuminated the night sky, making the stars in the sky and the Yangtze River under their feet look even deeper. From a place further away, the faint sound of a zither could be heard. It was lingering and incomplete, leaving one with an endless aftertaste. It seemed to match the fisherman's song. Luo Xian turned around and said to Zhang Xiaofeng, "Help me row the boat over there." She was pointing at the source of the sound. Zhang Xiaofeng did not want to argue with him over such a small matter. He casually hit the surface of the water and the boat changed direction. Luo Xian made a smiling expression that said, "At least you know what's good for you." Satisfied, she turned around and sang the fisherman's song again. The wudong tree in the golden well, a leaf falls and floats, the wind blows, cold and bleak. Let the fisherman's joy be free and unfettered, the moonlight stretches far into the night, the wind is silent and sparse. In the Han River, fishing straight, the meaning is not for the fish, the romance of the moon, at the head of the river, when the seven-stringed zither is tuned. Under the distant starry sky, a middle-aged scholar stopped playing the zither and poured wine while listening to the movements in the distance. Hearing the song, he suddenly laughed loudly. Green bamboo hat, green raincoat, the slanting wind at dusk does not need to return. A cup of turbid wine is drunk on the river, the fisherman's song is accompanied by the huqin at night. He waved his sleeve and hit the surface of the water. The boat shot out like an arrow, heading towards the middle of the river. Faintly, it was several hundred feet long, its momentum still lingering. When he sat down, his hand was already placed on the zither on his knee. With a twist of his hand, he had already suppressed a clear tune. They were already close to the middle of the river, and the current was very rapid. Without any human control, the two small boats had already moved along with the current and sailed together with the big boat. The night breeze on the river was slightly cold, and the lights around them gradually moved further away. Luo Xian's song was quiet and beautiful, and there was a hint of desolation in her voice. In the night sky and the river, the loneliness had left. Together with the sound of the zither, it gave birth to a sense of vastness in the world and the rivers. Luo Xian took the long wormwood. She poked a little out into the water and controlled the direction of the small boat. Several hundred meters away from her, the middle-aged scholar had a zither on his knee, drinking to his heart's content against the night breeze. As he wiped away the wine stains on his fluttering hair and beard, he played with the zither. The speed of the small boat was fast to begin with. Although it had started slower than the big boat of the Eastern Peak sect, it had already caught up. The disciples of the Eastern Peak sect had long been alarmed by the fisherman's song and the sound of the zither. They poked out their whale candles, brightly illuminating the bow and stern of the boat. When the patrolling disciples discovered the two small boats behind them, they immediately made a ruckus. Shang Ming poked his head out of the stern and looked back, only to see a woman in white holding a long wormwood, riding on the night breeze and stepping towards them. Her body was as swift as a duck, drifting like a god, treading on the waves, her stockings stirring up dust. At this moment, Shang Ming only had this line in his mind, which could describe this scene. In a trance, he seemed to see the goddess of Luo stepping on the river water and slowly approaching. Luo Xian's embroidered shawls and stockings were wet. She stepped on the river water and descended from the sky. The long wormwood hit the surface of the water and suddenly bounced up like a crooked bamboo. Carrying Luo Xian, she rose several feet into the air and flew towards the big boat of the Eastern Peak sect like a fairy. Only then did Shang Ming come back to his senses. He led Shang Bang and Shang Kuetai to greet her. In order to avoid offending the beauty, he didn't even draw the long saber at his waist, signaling the other two to be cautious enough to draw their weapons. As soon as Shang Ming saw Luo Xian, he asked as if he had lost his soul, Is it Fairy Shi who has graced us with her presence? I am Shang Ming. Apologies for not coming out to greet you. Luo Xian smiled as she took out the long wormwood and asked softly, I heard that you have the account book of the Eastern Peak sect, written by a beauty's handwriting. In it are the secrets of the aristocratic families and the volunteer army. I couldn't help but want to obtain it to win Yang Guang's trust. Tonight I will come to collect it on the moonlight. You are so elegant that I won't waste my time. Shang Ming's expression changed. He heard Shang Bang beside him ask, How did you know about the account book of the Eastern Peak sect? Who are you? Please tell me your name. Luo Xian smiled and asked, Taking without asking is a thief. Today I have asked you 3 times. Are you going to hand over the account book or not? She then shook her head with a smile and said, Forget it, I won't be polite with you. This account book, I will take it myself. With that said, the long wormwood in her hand had already shot out. The green bamboo pole was extremely flexible and tough. With a slight wave of her hand, the tip of the pole had already swung into a flower with a radius of 3 feet, knocking down the weapons in the hands of several Eastern Peak sect disciples. Before Shang Ming could say anything, he saw an azure dragon swimming out from the beauty's hand. Chapter 348. The wormwood emerged from the water, bringing with it a few drops of water. Under the illumination of the whale candle, it looked like a string of pearls spilling out. They bounced off the wormwood and broke the fierce wind like pearls, disappearing into the air silently like raindrops. Shang Bang was the first to bear the brunt of it. He only felt a drop of water falling on his chest, followed by a powerful force that made him unable to react in the slightest before he was sent flying into the air. His 4 limbs stretched forward while his body flew backwards, hitting the deck behind him. The several inches thick wooden planks were smashed into smithereens. Shang Bang lay paralyzed in the debris and had already stopped breathing. At the same time, several Dongming sect disciples were hit by the water droplet. They flew backward and fainted on the ground. In an instant, Shang Ming and the others were shocked. A mere drop of water could carry the power of a dragon and elephant. This level of martial arts was close to the legendary level. Most people were confused as to what was going on. However, Luo Xian did not stop. She pulled out the wormwood and turned around. She was already surrounded by the crowd. Kill! The Dongming sect disciples stepped on the formation. Their feet were firm and steady. As the ship bobbed up and down in the waves, their martial arts echoed with each other. They lowered their bodies and retracted their hands. Their movements were in sync with each other. It was as if they were one person wielding their swords and sabers, slashing at Luo Xian. Luo Xian did not seem to feel anything. The wormwood was bent into the shape of an arch bridge. The bamboo pole, which was 3 to 4 meters long, was controlled by her like an arm. It was as flexible as a green python. This strike was like the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens was unpredictable. That was why this strike had no head or tail. It was like a green python coming out of the blue. The will of the heavens could not be taken away. That was why this strike was unstoppable. Luo Xian opened her beautiful eyes and stared at the disciples of the Eastern Peak sect being slapped into the air. At this moment, Shang Ming saw that her eyes were like the vault of the heavens, filled with boundless depths and no emotions. What kind of martial arts is this? Shang Ming asked in fear. The first technique of the heavenly book of indifference, will of the heavens. Shang Ming said sadly, will of the heavens. He had already lost all will to fight. If he had looked at her as if she was a woman before, now he no longer had such thoughts. When he looked at her again, she was like a holy being. Only a divine being could wield the will of heaven. But he did not understand how they were worthy of such a martial art. It should have been carved in Song Kei's Hall of Sharpening. It should have been used to fight against Shi Zhishuan's undying seals. It should have been used to strike the vital spots of the 8 great elites in the evil cult, and it should have been used against Clear Sword. It should not have been used on pawns like him. When Luo Xian walked past him, The future leader of the Eastern Peak sect could only close his eyes and wait for death. In the distance, the middle-aged scholar on the small boat stood up absent-mindedly. His eyes seemed to see a peerless master standing alone at the head of the river. Of course, it was not Luo Xian, but the peerless talent behind her. The Eastern Peak sect hasn't stirred up any trouble. Why do you have to force us? Madame Dongming came out of the cabin and looked at Luo Xian. She had seen everything clearly from below and knew that no one on the ship could withstand a single move from this woman. Therefore, she could only stand out and try to clear up the misunderstanding. This has nothing to do with you. It's just that I know there must be evidence on the account books of all the aristocratic families and volunteer sects buying weapons. I need this evidence to prove my allegiance to the imperial court, Luo Xian said indifferently. Madame Dongming was even more puzzled. She asked in surprise, "Goddess, you are peerless and noble. You are like a lotus in jade, as if you are above the mortal world. Why do you want to participate in the filthy struggle for power in the imperial court? The world is in chaos, but can't you be untainted by the mud?" Luo Xian glanced at the two heads hiding behind Madame Dongming and knew that they were the main characters of this world, Quizhong and Su Jiling. However, with the appearance of Yang Guang who practiced the heavenly demonic power, it was unknown how long their luck could protect them. Luo Xian only glanced at them coldly and ignored them. Instead, she said to Madame Dongming, "In fact, not only the account books, but you and the entire Eastern Peak sect are also proof of my allegiance. Now tell me, are you going to hand over the account books or not?" Madame Dongming was at a loss and did not know what to do. Under Luo Xian's coercion, she could not resist, but she also refused to surrender. Her beautiful eyebrows were pressed together in a painful manner. In panic, her beautiful eyes looked around, hoping that someone would come and disrupt the situation. However, Shuanglong had ill intentions. Although Quizhong was drooling, he did not dare to act rashly. At this moment, someone shouted, "Stop!" Everyone turned around and saw Princess Dongming standing by the side, holding an account book as if she was going to throw it into the river. Shuanglong and Madame Dongming panicked and shouted, "No!" However, Luo Xian still stood calmly and looked at her with interest. Seeing that his target was about to drown, Quizhong quickly said, "Goddess, isn't this the account book you asked for? You won't just watch it get destroyed, will you?" Luo Xian smiled and shook her head. "What's there to be afraid of? There are two anyway. If you really destroy that one, I'll take this living account book and give it to Yang Guang." She pointed at Madame Dongming and said, "Who knows, there might be unexpected benefits." Dan Wanjing looked at Luo Xian, not knowing how such shameless words came out of this woman's mouth. Quizhong was afraid that she would really destroy the account book, so he scared her. Wow! Yang Guang, that incapable emperor, is an old lecher. It's really tragic for someone as beautiful as Madame to fall into his hands. Luo Xian smiled very relaxedly. She leaned against the mast without any manners and nodded in agreement. "That's it. I'm not the one who will suffer losses, right? When the time comes, I'll capture you two and let Yang Guang pluck the two of you. From then on, the emperor will not have morning court." She sang the last line in an opera tone, scaring Dan Wanjing so much that her face turned pale. Quizhong and Luo Xian played the good cop and the bad cop. "Princess, the account book is a small matter, but the loss of chastity is a big matter. You can't do something that hurts your loved ones and pleases your enemies just because of a moment of anger." Dan Wanjing looked at the account book in her hand, then looked at her mother, who was in a panic. She still felt that Quizhong's words made sense, so she hesitantly handed over the account book in her hand and said, "You have to promise to let my mother and me go after you get it." Quizhong nodded and walked forward, slowly wanting to take the account book, but he said, "Take your time, leave it to me, I'll bring it to Sister Fairy." His eyes glanced down the ship, and at the same time, he secretly made a gesture to Su Jiling. He took the account book and carefully wrapped it under Luo Xian's smile, looking like he was giving it to her, but in fact, he was approaching the side of the ship. "Look at this." He pretended to throw the account book over, but at the same time, he quickly put it in his arms, only throwing out a piece of rag. His body slid like a loach, and he was about to dive into the water. But before he could jump out, there was an extra palm on his shoulder, pressing him to the ground. The palm was clean and slender, the joints were well proportioned, and it was very beautiful. But this time, when Quozhong was pressed on his shoulder by such a palm, he did not even dare to breathe loudly. He just smiled and cried, "Fairy, sister fairy?" Chapter 349. Luo Xian produced the wrapped account book from Quozhong's chest and flipped through it while saying with a chuckle, "What a clever brat, even I was almost fooled. I can tell from your shifty eyes that you are not the children of an honest family. Tell me, who sent you here to steal this account book?" Dan Wanjing stared at Quozhong and Su Jiling with an expression of disbelief. When she finally came to, she said angrily, "Who sent you to approach me?" Without waiting for Quozhong's reply, she drew her sword and placed it on his shoulder. Quozhong glanced at Luo Xian as though he were asking for help, but the latter only smiled and turned back to look at the river. It was clear that he didn't want to get involved in this matter. Quozhong realized that the situation wasn't looking good. He had always been quick-witted and knew that the Eastern Peak sect wouldn't dare provoke an aristocratic army like the four great clans. He immediately made up a story, "We're spies sent by the Song clan. Of the four great clans, only our Song clan and the Li clan are left. As the saying goes, it's better for a fellow Taoist to die than for me. Yang Guang has wreaked havoc in the world with his terrifying might. As long as we can obtain evidence of the Li clan buying weapons from your Eastern Peak sect, we'll be able to divert Yang Guang's attention to the Li clan and prevent him from attacking Southern Ridge." "Is it someone from the Song clan?" Madame Dongming muttered. She sighed all of a sudden. "Our Eastern Peak sect's weapons business is too big. Now that chaos is upon us, a tall tree attracts the wind. Even without the Song clan, there's still the Li clan, the Yang clan." With that, she glanced at Luo Xian. "Perhaps it's someone from the imperial court. Sigh. We're already prisoners, why should we blame them?" "Wan put down the sword," Madame Dongming persuaded. Quozhong heaved a sigh of relief after feeling the weight on his shoulder lighten. He glanced at Luo Xian, who was standing at the bow with her hands behind her back, and begged for mercy. "Sister Fairy, we're young and ignorant. Now that we've explained everything, how are you going to deal with us?" "Of course we're going to capture him and give him to Yang Guang. It's not bad to be an extra." Luo Xian raised his eyebrows and said, "I think Yang Guang is also very interested to know who wants this account book." When Quozhong and Su Jiling heard this, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. They cried bitterly in their hearts, "This is so bitter. If you send us to Yang Guang, isn't that sending us to a tiger's den and a wolf's den? The He's jade that we took away is much more important than a mere account book." However, before they could come up with a solution, they heard Luo Xian say, "Lock them up and change course. We're heading to Jiangdu." The people of the Eastern Peak sect could only answer, "Yes." By the time everything was ready, the distant sky had already turned white, and the stars in the sky had dispersed. It was almost sunrise. Zhang Xiaofeng tied the small boat to the back of the big ship and was about to climb the side of the ship when he saw a middle-aged scholar standing on the small boat next to the big ship. He was the only one on the boat. The scholar stood at the bow with his hands clasped behind his back. The small boat moved steadily in the turbulent river. Seeing Zhang Xiaofeng looking over, the scholar folded his sleeves and asked, "Where are you going? Can you give me a ride?" Zhang Xiaofeng looked over and saw that the scholar's hair and beard were fluttering in the wind, but he did not look the least bit disheveled. Although his clothes were messy, he had a bearing of his own. He stood on the small boat that was drifting with the current. The boat swayed in the tumbling river, but his whole body was like a pine tree, and his body did not move at all. Before he could say anything, he heard a crisp female voice laughing from the boat. "Well, let me tell you, our boat is going to Jiangdu. If you are going the same way, why don't you come aboard and give us a ride?" "We are going the same way." The scholar laughed. As he spoke, he used his sleeves to roll up the long sleeves beside him, and the jet-black long sleeves wrapped around the rope at the bow of the boat. With a wave, he shot dozens of steps forward and got stuck at the tail of the big ship. His green robe flashed, and his figure had already shot out. With a light tap on the surface of the river, his body rose 10 feet into the air, and when he landed again, he was already standing firmly on the deck of the big ship. Luo Xian leaned on the mast and only smiled slightly. He was not moved at all. On the contrary, the sailors of the Eastern Peak sect couldn't help but slow down. It was only when they saw Luo Xian's unperturbed appearance that they calmed down. The shipwrights came back to their senses. The people in charge on the ship were no longer the people of the Eastern Peak sect. No matter how many masters there would be others to deal with, so they couldn't help but worry. After the scholar came up, he really acted like a guest on the ship. After thanking Luo Xian, he sat at the side, set up a shelf, and began to read. The book was brought up by Zhang Xiaofeng from his ship. There was also a jet-black guqin. Zhang Xiaofeng took the time to appraise it, and couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. The attributes of the guqin given by the Lord God were really powerful. Old Dragon Roar, 4-star silver-grade item, antler gray, black paint, snake belly broken and fine water broken. Rectangular dragon pond, oval phoenix pond. 3 words Old Dragon Roar are engraved on the back of the guqin. The sound in the dragon pond is relatively flat. It was made by Yi Tong and Zi Mu. It was nurtured by true qi and became psychic. It can support sound techniques and exert the characteristics of bewitching, heart-calming, intestines breaking, etc. New Yen language hanging curtains, Old Dragon Roar of the vast sea. F***ck. Even I don't have a 4-star silver-grade weapon, and he actually used it as a toy. At this moment, Zhang Xiaofeng directly had the greed to kill and seize the treasure. "Idiot!" Luo Xian scolded him. "Is this the most important information? A person who can carry a 4-star silver-grade item should at least be a 6-star storyline character? This is indeed a very important piece of information." Zhang Xiaofeng also came back to his senses and sighed. A good Tang Dynasty world. When did it become a place where there are as many 5-star as dogs and 6-star characters on the street? Only an 8-star like Yang Guang can shake it. The Lord God is too much of a scam. The reincarnators can't afford to hurt him. It is said that if you scold the Lord God during a mission, your luck will be reduced. Seeing that Zhang Xiaofeng immediately became spirited, as if he had been whipped, and begged the Lord God in a low voice, Luo Xian sighed helplessly. "This is not the important information I am talking about." "Then what is it?" Zhang Xiaofeng was puzzled. Old Dragon Roar is a zither style that became popular in the Tang Dynasty. It would never appear in the Sui Dynasty. So what? There is also a 300-foot-high city wall here. This is a plot world, and a wuxia plot world at that. It is normal to have some things that are different from reality, Zhang Xiaofeng said. Is it normal for the Lord God to make mistakes? Luo Xian asked. She pointed to the appraisal result and said, Curtain New Yen language, see Old Dragon Roar. We all know that the Lord God's appraisal conclusion must be related to the story of the item itself. There will not be an item in the Spring and Autumn Warring States period storyline world with a poem from the Tang Dynasty and the Han Dynasty. In other words, the appraisal sentence itself is a wisp of obsession condensed by the owner of the item, and it is even closely related to the special effects of the item. These two sentences came from Su Shi's Tang Dynasty Guqin Jiuxiao Huanpei. The original sentence is Amiable East Wind Cold, Lang Lang Huanpei Sound, Curtain New Yen language, see Old Dragon Roar. Let me ask you, on an item from the Sui dynasty, why would there be an appraisal ending of a poem from the Song dynasty? This. Zhang Xiaofeng was speechless. Chapter 350. Zhang Xiaofeng was fiddling with a laptop. His fingers quickly slid across the electronic keyboard, touching the sensitive electrodes on it, and entered a long string of code. He adjusted the program while communicating with his teammates on the other side of the screen. The communication system has been installed. Through the camouflage of the small spy satellites in the sky, I have hidden our real communication relay station seamlessly. The satellites will simulate real communication activities, which is equivalent to an independent sandbox system. There is absolutely no problem in terms of safety. If they target the satellites, I will give them a surprise. Lu Li, the captain on the other side of the screen, said, "The satellite monitoring system is also an important supplement to our intelligence. Pay attention to collecting relevant data. Also, we have tested Yangguang several times in the past few days, and the results are not optimistic. The strength of Yangguang's subordinates is much more terrifying than we thought. The power of the two factions may be unbalanced." Does that mean that the Lord will also strengthen our opponents in the team battle? Zhang Xiaofeng's face was ashen as he said in horror. We can't rule out this possibility. Oh right, there is a piece of information that may be useful to you. After several tests, we have almost locked onto Yang Guang's location. Zhang Xiaofeng sat up straight and opened the picture that Lu Li sent him. He only saw a red dot very close to the ship where he was. It's Linjiang Palace. Xiao Zhang, come out. Luo Xian's scream suddenly came into his ears. Look, what is that? Zhang Xiaofeng had never heard such a shrill voice from Luo Xian. In his memory, this unreliable sage had never lost his composure like this before. Zhang Xiaofeng almost rushed to the deck and even drew his weapon along the way. But when he reached the bow of the ship, he was still so scared that he spat out a few gibberish words. What the F***ck? Is the Lord trying to play us to death? At the end of the distance, a rainbow crossed the two sides of the Yangtze River, and a huge water column protruded from the flat bottom, reaching into the vast clouds. The sound of the huge waves, like the roar of a mountain torrent, could be heard all the way to the Eastern Peak Sec's ship. In the distant mountains, the Yangtze River soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. The sky was like a mirror lake, and the huge water-colored sky was paved by the water. In the vast sea of clouds, only the area where the Yangtze River rushed into, forming a lake with a radius of more than 10 miles, floated in the sky. Just as Zhang Xiaofeng and the others were shocked by this incomparably spectacular scene, the ship seemed to have sped up a bit. Soon, they realized that it was not an illusion, because the speed of the ship had increased by 2 times. Luo Xian, who had come back to his senses, screamed, "Drop the anchor! Headwind Yang Fan, we need to slow down. The water column is going to suck us up." However, her words had no effect at all. All the shipwrights, whether they were from the Dongming sect or hired, knelt on the deck and prayed piously in the direction of the water column, submitting to the majestic heavenly might. Luo Xian lost his composure and saw that only 3 people were standing on the deck. Even Madame Dongming was kneeling at the bow of the ship. The only ones left standing were the 2 members of the reincarnation team and the mysterious scholar. Is this His Majesty's heavenly might?" the scholar said with a trembling voice. Before Luo Xian and Zhang Xiaofeng could regain their senses, they saw the scholar shake his head and say, "No, it's not." He stretched out his hands towards the sky in surprise and said excitedly, "It's the Commander-in-Chief." He looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "The Commander-in-Chief is back. Around them, the Commander-in-Chief is back. He's back." Amidst the echoes, the ship had already approached the side of the heavenly pillar like an arrow released from a bow. The intense current carried the ship straight up into the sky. Only then did they realize that the huge water column was not a smooth one. It was formed by two streams of water flowing in different directions and had a spiral undulation. The ship rose and fell along this undulation. The bow of the ship was raised nearly 60 degrees and spiraled up. In the mirror lake in the sky, Yang Guang's physical body was frozen at the bottom of the lake. Endless water vapor was infused into his flesh, causing his entire body to surge with power. This power, with him as the source, sublimated into a strange power that was neither real nor fake. It was like the heavenly demon primordial spirit summoned by the strongest power of the heavenly demonic power. However, what appeared behind him was not the ferocious heavenly demon primordial spirit, but the shadow of a young man looking at the world with his hands behind his back. As his eyes gradually became vivid, the shadow-like body gradually solidified. No words could describe the magic of this moment. It was like an imaginary world with memories, virtual emotions, stories, and images. It was extremely vivid and wonderful. A person living in the memory suddenly had the concept of me. It was like a world that was touched by a person's thoughts. In the perceptual world that was composed of form and form, there was suddenly a form that broke through the form and transformed into a sentient being. It was like a very vivid fantasy character on a screen had suddenly walked out of the dimension wall and came to reality. Chen Ong walked out of Yang Guang's visualization and came to this world. Yang Guang practiced the heavenly demonic power and the supreme Wang Qing technique and created Chen Ong in his fantasy world. Chen Ong broke the boundary between fantasy and reality. He walked out of the highest realm of the heavenly demonic power and became a sentient being. Even in the records of the lords, he had a clean background. The Tang dynasty's reincarnation scale is 13,478-12. Chen Ong was born from Yang Guang's thoughts and descended into this world. I descended into this world for all living beings. Chen Ong sighed. Tong Guan and the others, who were surrounding the huge iceberg in the center of the mirror lake, bowed together and shouted, "The Lord descended into this world for all living beings and illuminated the endless heavens." The atmosphere was feverish and serious, with a trace of terrifying madness. Countless virtual personalities that had been brainwashed by the supreme Wang Qing technique showed extreme fanaticism and devotion at this moment. It's their first day in this world, and they're already acting like a cult leader. Chen Ong sighed and said, "I wonder what kind of settings the virtual personalities in the mysterious universe have set for them." The heavenly demonic power is a technique that plants a seed in someone else's consciousness and then sublimates the dimension to be reborn into this world. It's like a demonic technique. It's fine if Yang Guang's emotions were erased and his personality was reconstructed, but even his fundamental consciousness was not spared. If I were to be reborn, it would be completely denying his existence. Everyone only has one real existence that they can completely recognize, and that is me. Everything else is the appearance of me. Then, wanting to create another me is tantamount to a paradox. Only by erasing the original me can one completely recognize another me in their consciousness. This idea of sublimating the dimension is simply insane. Actually, I'm a good person. Chen Ong sighed and said, "This completely demonic and insane experiment must have nothing to do with me. I'm also a victim." Stepping on the bottom of the mirror lake, Chen Ong saw a large ship break out of the water. As the mirror lake rotated, it stopped right in front of him. Chapter 351. Captain, Xiao Xian and the rest have disappeared. Zhang Zhongheng saw the dot representing Zhang Xiaofeng's position flicker twice on the screen and suddenly disappear from the satellite map. Zhang Zhongheng quickly called up the satellite and locked onto the position where they disappeared. He was shocked to see that the originally clear sky along the Yangtze River suddenly had a huge cloud with Linjiang Palace as the center. The circular cloud on the map was spinning like the eye of a typhoon, covering a large area with a radius of tens of miles. He looked up at the sky, and it was indeed gloomy, just like what was shown on the cloud map. Is this a typhoon? A newbie asked, not understanding. What the hell is a typhoon? Luli could not help but curse. He turned around and glared at the poor newbie, roaring, "What the F***ck is a world typhoon coming to Yangzhou? This is a powerhouse that can trigger celestial phenomenon." Luli quickly operated on his laptop. He observed the general shape of the cloud, and at the same time, called up a drone to approach Linjiang Palace. A 6-star powerhouse can basically cause a change in the weather, but to be able to cover such a large area, he has to be at least a 7-star pinnacle, overdrawing his potential to activate a forbidden spell. But the Tang Empire is a world of martial arts. Even if they are the most adept at manipulating the weather and using the power of the heavens, they need to be an 8-star pinnacle powerhouse to trigger a phenomenon of tens of miles. Hearing the captain's analysis, Zhang Zhongheng's face suddenly turned pale, and he mumbled, "But the Tang Empire's martial arts focus on the mind system. As everyone knows, the mind system's martial arts are good at fighting alone, and they are the martial arts with the strongest survival ability. They are completely different from the vitality system's martial arts that are good at large-scale destruction. If it is a world like Fengyun, it might be an 8-star powerhouse like Xiongba, but if it is really a mind system powerhouse that can trigger a phenomenon of this scale, turning illusions into reality, being able to use one's will to interfere with reality on a large scale, or using illusions as illusions to absorb the consciousness of tens of miles into one's own spiritual world. It is a 9-star martial grandmaster who has touched the gate of God." Luli sighed. Zhang Zhongheng's face was wooden, and he unconsciously mumbled to himself, "The gate of God's 4 heavenly barriers are the body, soul, energy, and will. Passing one barrier will allow one to enter the gate of God, and one can be called a 10-star apatheicized powerhouse. We were all wrong." He looked in the direction of the Riverside Palace and said regretfully, "Yang Guang and the person behind him are not 8-star army destroyers, but 9-star beginner stage destroyers, or even a 9-star advanced stage nation destroyer grandmaster. Xiao Xian and the others were all harmed by us. This world is not a world where good and evil oppose each other, but a unipolar world where Yang Guang's power is crushing." "Things haven't come to the worst yet," said Luli to him. "What we showed to Yang Guang is goodwill. At the very least, the account book in Xiao Xian's hands can provide them with room to maneuver. Xiao Xian is the wisest among us. She has a better way to salvage everything than we do. Do you think that a small Dongming sect, or even all the opposing forces in the world, can make Yang Guang take them seriously?" Zhang Zhongheng retorted loudly, "Don't forget, a 9-star powerhouse can find out where we come from. He has the ability to contact the Lord God's realm, and even the realm welcomes a storyline powerhouse like him. Isn't a group of unknown people who are out of our control more dangerous than a group of skeletons in a tomb? It's not like you don't know the danger of storyline characters, especially these kinds of powerhouses who have reached the 9-star realm. They are different from those NPCs. Their willpower, spiritual cultivation, and even intelligence are top-notch. Instead of relying on them to be stupid, it's better to just kill themselves." Zhang Zhongheng glared at Luli. His offense had made Luli, the captain, unable to back down anymore. Otherwise, the Order of the Windchasers would be destroyed. Luli's expression became serious. She looked at Zhang Zhongheng, who had lost his composure, and said coldly, "I know you are worried about Luo Xian. Anyone would lose their composure when they see the person they like in danger, but this kind of loss of composure will only make us dizzy and unable to make the right decision. The captain's authority is not to be offended. Zhongheng, you have crossed the line." Almost all the veterans stood behind the captain, expressing their attitude. At this time, Zhang Zhongheng also came to his senses. He took a deep breath and shook his head violently. "You are right. When we return from this mission, I will accept my punishment, but I will not leave this mission." Luli nodded, and a spell shining with magic appeared on her body. She said to Zhang Zhongheng, "Sign this command spell contract." The man in the suit, Old Hu, gasped. A 5-star silver-ranked command spell from the 8E world. The captain is really going all out. If you bring it to the market, I'm afraid the reincarnated travelers who specialize in magic will go crazy. That is a silver-ranked item from at least a 7-star storyline world. If it is a command spell from the type Moon Lord world, its value is simply immeasurable. This is the relic of my former teammate. It was only obtained from a parallel timeline world. The level of the rules is too low. I'm afraid the real powerhouses will not be interested in it. Lu Li smiled bitterly. Old Hu's reaction was even more exaggerated. He said in shock, "Captain, you actually experienced the ATE world. That's amazing." At that time, I was still a newbie. The Windchasers had only recruited me in that world. At that time, they had already been promoted to a 7-star Samsara team. In the end, I was the only one left after the team battle. Seeing Zhang Zhongheng nimbly sign his real name, Lu Li slapped the command incantation back onto her right arm. He said to Zhang Zhongheng, "This is a restraint and also a guarantee. If you lose your head and insist on dragging everyone into danger, then this will be the chain that binds you. If you are in danger and meet with difficulties, it will also be your help. But don't try to put yourself in danger and force me to use this command spell." Zhang Zhongheng nodded with a look of realization. He replied, "Thank you, Captain." The sincerity in his tone made Lu Li heave a sigh of relief. If they encountered an unruly person, or a resolute and gloomy person, then the cracks in the reincarnation team would have already been buried. Fortunately, he did not have the confidence to lead a team that was not united to face such a dangerous world. For now, we can't break through the situation with the strength of our team. I've decided to initiate a group battle now and summon the enemy team to descend. This will bring enough pressure to Yang Guang and reduce his focus on us. Only by creating a common enemy can we have the possibility of cooperation with Yang Guang. We have the advantage of intelligence, and Yang Guang has absolute power. At the same time, the enemy team that appears is more dangerous than us. Only then can we have 90% confidence to protect Luo Xian and the others. Saying that, Lu Li suddenly laughed and said to the team members, "Speaking of which, haven't you all been curious about the trump card that gives me the confidence to survive the group battle? The gold grade item that triggers the group battle in advance. Now, let me reveal the answer to you all." Lu Li stretched out his right hand, and the 2 command spells on his wrist suddenly shone with a magical brilliance. A circle of golden magic suddenly shrouded the position where Lu Li was standing. "Fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up." The cycle repeats, followed by 5. However, when it's full, it's time to abandon it. Announcement: your body is at my command. My life is with your sword. 6-star gold grade item, small holy grail. Use. User A187376889 used the item. Small holy grail. Submitting a team battle request. Detecting the large holy grail's spirit meridian system. Spirit meridian system not locked. Preparing to introduce a team battle contract. Preparing to send out the true god team of the reincarnation team. Chen Ong, who was in the mirror lake, suddenly raised his head to look at the sky. His gaze transcended the natural moat of the world of reincarnation and stared directly at the master god's operating laws. Looking at the flowing laws and order, Chen Ong suddenly smiled and inserted 2 lines of laws. Detected that Yang Guang has submitted the large Holy Grail Spirit Vein System's substitute system, the Dragon Vein System. The small Holy Grail has been connected to the He Sure by system. The conditions for the Holy Grail battle are established. World Executor Chen Ong has applied to modify the Holy Grail system template. The He Sure by system template has been submitted. Reviewing. Approved. The Holy Grail / He Sure by Battle template has been submitted to the Lord God Space for record. The He Sure by Dragon Vein system is being loaded. No Gaia or Alea system, no Magic or Weave system detected. No Substitute system, no Martial Arts Consciousness detected. Void Shattering system detected. The He Sure by Battle system has been reconstructed. Preparations complete. Loading the Samsara team. Chapter 352. Come through the theory of suppression, guardian of balance. As Luli finished chanting, the magic circle under his feet emitted a dazzling light. It seemed that the mountains under his feet were shaking. After everything dissipated, nothing happened. Above the mirror lake, Luo Xian and Zhang Xiaofeng were surprised to see a jade disc floating in Su Jiling's arms. The He Sure Bai, which was inlaid with gold, shone brightly and floated in the air. Everyone could feel a strange energy wave shrouding it. The light purple power of the dragon vein was circling around the He Sure Bai. It symbolized the strange power of the agreement between heaven and man. With the He Sure Bai as the carrier, it condensed into a beautiful jade disc. The gold that decorated the gap fell to the ground, and the broken part of the He Sure Bai was gradually repaired. The words engraved on it, "Receive the mandate of the heavens, live forever," emitted a bright color like a golden talisman. The aura of the dragon vein ran through the jade disc. Although it had changed its form, anyone who saw this strange jade disc would naturally think of its name, Hushur Jade Disc. Luo Xian applied to the Lord God to appraise the jade floating in the air. He Sure Bai, 8-star gold level item, called Pu In Chu by In Qin, an imperial jade seal after the first emperor. Qin passed it to Han passed it to Jin, and Jin passed it to Sui. It is not a Bai, but a great unification. Today, Yang Guang used the Bai as the agreement between heaven and man, and He Sure Bai as the proof of the oath, forming the dragon vein, accepting the mandate of heaven, and swearing with the Lord God. Receive the mandate of heaven, live forever. The sovereignty certificate of the Tang world. With it, you can obtain the ownership of the entire Tang world, offer it to the Lord God, and the Lord God's space will fulfill your wish. 8-star gold level item. Zhang Xiaofeng said tremblingly. We're rich. Sister Luo Xian, we're rich. It's worth it to give up the task and return to the Lord God's space. He was almost incoherent with excitement. We can make a wish to the Lord God's space, that is, as long as we get this thing, we can leave this damn place. Looking at Zhang Xiaofeng's fanatical eyes, Luo Xian had to pour cold water on him. There's no such good thing in God's realm. Don't forget that benefits and risks are always equal. Luo Xian gently took down the He Sure Bai from the air and showed him the hidden attribute. He Sure Bai Carrier, 6-star gold item, the proof of the He Sure Bai's war. It was originally a strange jade that condensed fate and destiny in this world. It had a strange energy and later became the token of the agreement between the heavens and humans in the He Sure Bai's war. It became the hub and material carrier of the Dragon Vein system. Only after the Heshabi War was over would it merge with the Dragon Vein and become a true Heshabi. The Pearl of Freedom, the Jade of Harmony. Chen Ong stood on the mirror lake and looked at the 3 odd-shaped runes that appeared on his wrist, which were the so-called command incantations. But this time, the command incantations were not the crystallization of the laws of magic, but the authority granted by the Lord Space. As part of the agreement between heaven and man that Chen Ong had reached with the Lord Space on behalf of the entire world, these 3 runes could be said to be a manifestation of the Lord Space. Chen Ong did not expect that a reincarnator who came to this world would carry a Lord Space item like the small Holy Grail. As the carrier of the large Holy Grail system, the small Holy Grail had part of the core rules and hub of the large-scale magic spell known as the Holy Grail. In the Lord Space, the only authority it had was to initiate the Holy Grail War. In the Moon World or the Holy Grail War, Using the small Holy Grail would automatically connect to the large Holy Grail's spiritual vein in Fuyuki City and initiate the Holy Grail War. The scale of the war was determined by the power accumulated in the spiritual vein. In other words, the closer to the world where the next Holy Grail War would normally begin, the stronger the power that would be triggered in advance. If the small Holy Grail was used without the external large Holy Grail system operating, the Lord Space would initiate a normal team battle. But in the Great Tang world, the small Holy Grail should have directly requested the Lord Space to initiate a team battle due to the lack of the large Holy Grail's cooperation. However, an existence like Chen-Ong, who could spy on the Lord Space's operating rules, appeared. Chen-Ong completed the external conditions required for the large Holy Grail to activate, directly triggering the complete version of the Holy Grail War that could only be started in the Moon world. Since the Great Tang world did not have a heroic spirit system, nor did it have the Alaya or Gaia consciousness, nor did it have the origin or magic system, Chen-Ong could only rely on the Great Tang world's own system to supplement and perfect the Great Tang's unique Holy Grail War, which was also the current war of Heshibi's entire system. The mission was basically the same as what the three imperial families had done in the original Holy Grail War. If there was no spiritual vein, then he would use the power of the dragon vein to complete the war of Heshibi's system. If there was no magic, then he would use the power of the country's fate to carry the power of the dragon vein. If there were no heroic spirits, then he would use the Lord Space's mission system to replace the heroic spirits with reincarnators. After repeated improvements by the Lord Space and Chen-Ong, he finally determined the entire system of the War of Heshibi and established the agreement between heaven and man, using the Great Tang world's origin consciousness and the power of the Lord Space to ensure the continuation of the war. As Yang Guang's lord, Chen-Ong possessed the majority of the power of the entire system of destiny, so he naturally became a participant in the War of Heshibi, a VIP player with the triple identities of referee, GM, and player. As for the remaining destiny, according to the current general trend of the world, the Turks and Goryeo each had a share, the Li clan, the Song clan, and Do Jianda each had a share, and the last portion of destiny fell into the hands of Zhu Kan, who was supported by the Buddhist sections. Luo Xian and the others did not know what Chen-Ong was doing. They only saw the Heshibi quickly fly toward the mysterious young man and float above his right palm. The scholar who had hitched a ride on the ship saw the young man and immediately half-knelt on the ground and excitedly shouted, "Commander of the Suwu Hall, Huang Chang, greets Governor." "Huang Chang, you did well." Chen-Ong nodded with a smile. "Get up. Don't let others see you as a joke." "Yes, Governor." Huang Chang stood up and introduced, "Governor, these are the leaders of the Eastern Peak faction, and the other two are heroes who wanted to seek refuge with His Majesty." "You don't need to introduce me." Chen-Ong smiled and stopped him. "This world is about to change. No matter what their previous identities were, they will be completely different in a while." "Fine." Chen-Ong stood with his hands clasped behind his back and laughed. "Let me lift the curtain of this era." With these words, the world changed color. Luo Xian saw 3 runes suddenly light up on the mysterious young man's right wrist. This familiar scene seemed to make her think of something, but she could not recall it for a moment. "Announce." Chen-Ong raised his right hand and revealed the runes on the inside of his wrist. "The Heshibi, the contract of the dragon vein. The representative of the world decreed by the king hereby promises, saying, receive the mandate of the heavens and live forever. The king's mandate upholds good, and the king's mandate upholds evil. A gentleman's promise, the new moon repeats 4 times, its use 3 times. Phoenix, Phoenix. Return of the soul." At the same time, in the Li household of Taiyuan, the young Li Shiming was examining his wrist. Not long ago, he felt his right wrist was numb and itchy. It was sore and swollen, but he was in front of Li Yuan at the time, so he could not examine it immediately. Pulling up his sleeve, Li Shiming saw 3 ancient runes emitting a strange light on his wrist. For some reason, He placed 3 of his fingers on the 3 talismans. Li Min couldn't help but recite the incantation, saying, Great Bong Weiping, Great Bong Wehan. Hueda Waning, Zong Zi Weiqing. Donning armor, Xiao Air Spear. Life and death bond, Uze. This was the Heshabi, the contract of the dragon vein, saying, Receive the mandate of the heavens and live forever. The king's mandate upholds good, and the king's mandate upholds evil. A gentleman's promise, the new moon repeats 4 times, its use 3 times. Phoenix, Phoenix. Return of the Soul. Chapter 353. Water is moist, fire is fiery, wood is crooked, metal is smooth, soil is steady. The cycle repeats, and the number is 5. In other words, the style of the heavens, the battle of the king's mandate. This is the wall of Hushur, the contract of the dragon's vein. Swear. Receive the mandate of the heavens and live forever. The king's mandate upholds good, the king's mandate upholds evil. A gentleman's promise, the new moon repeats 4, and its use is 3. Phoenix, Phoenix. Soul return. A magnificent bronze door with a ghost face stood in the center of a strange plain. This was the hub of all worlds, the center of the endless reincarnation plane. There were endless projections of the bronze door. At the center of the public space of every main god team stood a bronze door like this. Behind the bronze door, the sound of gears turning could be heard. In the Great Tang world, the Li clan of Taiyuan, the Song clan of Lingnan, the Turkic king's tent, the Goguryeo palace, the Garuda king Zhu Kan's residence, Do Jianda's camp, and the mirror lake of Linjiang palace burst with resplendent light. The huge bronze door descended from the sky and opened under the summoning ceremony of the 7 masters. Lu Li didn't feel any discomfort when he opened his eyes. It was as if his vision was blurred, and the surrounding environment changed in an instant. He and his other teammates were all standing on a smooth ice surface. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was a smiling young man. Chen Ong sized up the Samsara team in front of him. Not only were Luo Xian and the other 2 summoned, even the newbies in the life support system appeared in the summoning array. Oh? You are my pervert? Chen Ong smiled. Lu Li couldn't pay attention to Chen Ang's words anymore. An emotionless voice sounded in his mind, Massacre Mission, Battle of the Wall of Hushur. Mission Plane, Twin of Tang, 34% deviation. Mission, assist the Master to win the Battle of the Wall of Hushur as a heroic spirit and become the only survivor. Punishment for failure, obliteration. Team Windchaser, Team Divine Marshal, Team Red Beauty, Team Universe, Team Heaven's Chosen, Team Truth, and Team Viper. A total of 7 teams have joined the battle, and only 1 team can emerge victorious. Only when there is only 1 team left in the battle, or when the master they support obtains the Heshabi, will they be allowed to leave this plane. This dimension is slaughter mode. You can obtain 50% of the inheritance of the enemies you kill. There is no punishment for killing your teammate. Mission item. Heshabi, carrier of dragon vein power, automatically obtained by the master who has condensed 100% of dragon vein power. Current dragon vein power. Great Sui Yang Guang, 50% Li Clan Li Shimin, 15% Song Clan Song K, 10% Goryeo Gowan, 8% Turkic Khaganate Shibi, 11% Garuda King Zhu Kan, 1% Changal King Do Jianda, 5%. The masters of each team can use their command incantations to assign tasks to the Samsara teams under them. The Samsara travelers must complete all the tasks except for those that are certain to die. Samsara travelers who have lost their masters must seek refuge with other masters with command incantations within 3 days. They must accept a command incantation as the price, or else they will be killed. 7 teams of death. Lu Li's face was pale as she said in a daze. It's actually 7 teams of death. Divine Martial Beauty, Heavenly Prodigy. These are all Samsara teams of 7 stars and above. Why did it become like this? Shouldn't it be a team battle? Why did it become a battle of Heshebe? God, you must be joking. Windchasers, alignment. Yang Guang. Zhang Xiaofeng looked like he had been toyed with. He said numbly, "We're dead this time." Team Divine Martial is a bunch of martial arts fanatic. Team Beauty is also famous and is known as one of the strongest 7-star teams. We are just Africans who have just risen to 6 stars. How can we fight against those paying players? You must have misunderstood. Luo Xian explained helplessly. We are the strongest team. What are you talking about? Zhang Xiaofeng raised his head. No matter how confident we are just newbies who have only been formed for 6 storylines. How can we fight against those strong teams who have been famous for a long time? Calm down and think about it. We were assigned to the Dragon Bloodline's strongest camp from the start and were targeted by all the other forces. Our opponents in the team battle are also the strongest teams of their respective levels. This is not in line with the God's strategy of balance. Not to mention, there are all kinds of overt and covert suppression. There is only one possibility for this situation. What possibility? Zhang Xiaofeng asked anxiously. That is, the side we are in is too strong. So strong that we have lost our balance. So strong that all the teams have to unite to fight against them. So strong that only by placing us in this camp that it is in line with the God's strategy of balance. Luo Xian calmly analyzed all this before turning to look at Chen Ong. Am I right? The powerhouse behind Yang Guang. Hearing Luo Xian's explanation, the rest of the Windchasers newbies perked up and looked at Chen Ong expectantly. Not bad, you didn't disappoint me. I can tolerate my followers being a bunch of weaklings, but I definitely can't tolerate you guys being a bunch of idiot. Chen Ong smiled. In fact, your enemies are much more terrifying than you think. Because of the Dragon Bloodline's energy and the protection of luck, the masters of the other forces will grow faster than you can imagine. In other words, the longer you drag this on, the stronger your enemies will be. To me, this doesn't matter. But to you, every minute that passes will increase the danger you face. Furthermore, when the other teams are able to turn the tables on me and influence the entire situation, don't even think about it. My will is not to be blasphemed. In other words, you will face pressure from 3 sides: me, the enemy, and the world. You have to think carefully. Do you want to give up the right to act independently and obtain my protection, or do you want to maintain your freedom and face the enemies who will soon unite? Obedience or freedom, I will give you the chance to choose. Tell me now. Chen Ong asked with a smile. I'm different from the other masters. I don't need the command incantation to force you. Lu Li and her teammates looked at each other before lowering their heads. We will follow your orders, master. That's good. Let's set off now. Chen Ong said calmly. I need the participants in this war to be aware of their situation. The corners of Chen Ang's mouth curled into a sneer. Moreover, 7 participants are a little too many. We have to make them move. Only then can this war be considered evenly matched. In the Golden City Palace of Lijiang City, a maniacal laughter rang out. Ha ha ha! What a familiar smell! Is this war? The joy of a man's life is nothing more than killing lives, suppressing the rebels, defeating the enemy, uprooting them, seizing everything they have, forcing their relatives to cry, and raping their wives and daughters. A short man in leather armor stood on Do Jianda's throne and laughed. An awe-inspiring aura spread out with him as the center. It made people vaguely hear the galloping of the cavalry, the crying of the civilians, and the laughter of the barbarians in the bloody battlefield. I recommend a book. Bring a Jurassic with you. The author is the author who wrote The Legend of the Cretaceous Deinosuchus. I read it for the whole afternoon today. It's very interesting. There's a direct train on the page. You can go and have a look if you're bored. Chapter 354. A short man dressed in leather armor and traditional clothes of the grassland people stood in Do Jianda's newly renovated Jincheng Palace. When he heard the announcement of the Lord God, His expression became very ugly. A samsara traveler dressed as a shaman next to him asked uneasily, Arrowhawk, this mission seems to be for us to assist this southerner. Should we? Shut up. Dai Sendari. The short man sneered. You're an insult to your name. You actually want to submit to the weak southerners? You're not fit to be a descendant of the Golden Family. Genghis Khan taught us that the greatest joy in a man's life is to kill, subdue the rebels, defeat the enemy, eradicate them, take everything they have, force their relatives to cry, and rape their wives and daughters. The Southerners are only our slaves, they are not worth our lives. But in this 7-man team battle, other than weaklings like the Windchasers, the other teams like the Divine Martial Team and the Beauty Team are stronger than us. Moreover, there's no way we can compromise. If we give up the advantage that the Lord God gave us, the battle will be very difficult. The shaman at the side still wanted to persuade him, but he was immediately stopped by the short heir Riley and Ku. Idiot. As the Mongolian geniuses, we are not trusted by the Southerners. Even if we obey them, do you think the forces that the chief god assigned to us will trust us? It would be better to seize, control, and replace his forces and control this power. There are 100,000 Southerners here. If we can contact the tribes in the grasslands and sell the Southerners to them, we can immediately gain the support of hundreds of small tribes. At that time, with the forces we control, do we have to worry about not being able to bribe the warriors of those tribes? If they want women, we give them the women of the city. If they want gold and slaves, we let them kill and plunder. Just like what Genghis Khan did, robbing the wives, daughters, and wealth of the Southerners, letting the warriors indulge themselves in the flames of war. Aren't such warriors and tribes more trustworthy than the weak Southerners? The shaman still wanted to dissuade them. But we can be like Genghis Khan, confuse and deceive them. When the time is right, we can take back everything we want. If we fall out with them now, we won't be able to use their power. Dai Sendari, Team Shenwu and Team Beauty are both from the south. Although they are stronger than us, they have a weakness, and that is that they are always scheming against each other. The two strongest teams will definitely treat each other as their greatest enemy. Under such circumstances, we should not hesitate to draw two sides, the Southerners and the other races. We should unite with the weaker teams to deal with the Southerners who have the greatest advantage, Team Red Beauty, Team Divine Martial, and the weakest Team Windchaser. At the same time, we should incite them to fight amongst themselves. Our team chosen, the Korean Team Universe, the Turkish Team Truth, and the Mercenary Viper Team, will have to work together to eliminate those Southerners. Eril and Ku analyzed the situation for him. In this situation, we have to show our hatred towards the Southerners. We have to use the cruelest methods to torture the Southerners, and at the same time reach a consensus. This is a kind of psychological warfare, but when we kill a common enemy, we will be able to get closer to each other. How do we get the Koreans and Turks to form an alliance with us, even if it's a temporary and fragile alliance? Only blood and wine, the blood and wine of the Southerners, can be drunk together. You are still far from the Gold family's military strategy and strategy. Rilhi and Ku stood up and walked towards the palace gate. Do Jiendo was locked in a wooden cage and hung at the gate. The corpses of his personal guards were piled up messily on the square in front of the palace gate, forming a huge pit. A huge and twisted worm with a big belly was curled up inside the pit, devouring the corpses. The death worm is still incomparable to the alien. Although it lays eggs quickly, the larvae and adults are too weak. They can only cause some trouble for the weakest soldiers. However, the Southerners who can help us guard this city are enough to deal with the normal civilians. If this was the desert, these worms would be very useful, but this is the land of the Southerners, not the grasslands or the vast ocean. Is the command incantation still not able to be transferred? Eril and Ku frowned. It can't be transferred. Although we managed to control him first, the restrictions of the God King are still very strict. If we take the initiative to harm him, we might give him the chance to use the command incantation. Ariel and Ku sneered. So what if we give him the chance? He's just a storyline character, a low-level existence. What can he understand? If it wasn't for the information that the God King gave him, he probably wouldn't even know how to use the command incantation, just as the Chosen Ones were methodically implementing their plan. Chen Eng's gaze was locked on this place from dozens of miles away. Looking at the bloodstains and tragic state of Do Jianda's palace, his gaze gradually turned cold. Although he didn't expect the samsara travelers of the foreign races to display an equal and loving attitude, this kind of disdain and unscrupulous behavior still made him very angry. The Chosen One's actions and the God King's encouragement showed that they didn't reject them. Even with Chen Eng's indifference and heartlessness, he would still be angry, not to mention that Will of China was living in symbiosis with Chen Eng's consciousness. At this moment, Chen Eng's spirit was firmly locked on the position of the Chosen Ones. Will of China, who had always been very quiet, had a rare high degree of overlap with his consciousness. Both of them had sentenced the God King's space to death. As for the Chosen Ones, they were just a fly that was killed in passing. Although Luli, who was next to Chernong, was a little slower, she immediately discovered the traces of the Chosen Ones. The unmanned ornithopter disguised as a fly swept over the Jincheng Palace camp. The Mother of Worms and the corpse flashed across the screen, causing the Wind Chaser squad to be immediately vigilant. Deathworm? It should be the Chosen Ones. Damn it, they killed so many people. Zhang Xiaofeng said angrily. The Chosen Ones is a 7-star squad. Their captain, All Hawk, is a big butcher who wholeheartedly imitates Temujin. He can be regarded as a leader among the Mongolian reincarnators. His enhancement should be Science bloodline, and he may have practiced the military's battle formation martial arts. According to the intelligence, he is at the peak of 7-star, but according to my estimation, he should have broken through to 8-star. Wasn't he chased by many reincarnators in China who thought of the Han dynasty and had nowhere to go, so he had to run to South Asia and rely on the protection of European and American ghosts to survive? Why did he dare to return to the world of the plot of China? Zhang Zhongheng wondered. Luo Xian sneered and said, "It's another dog released by our own people. China is so big, there are all kinds of people. Aren't there 2 members from the Huaxia region in their team?" Just as the goshawk swooped down again, Arel and Ku suddenly raised their heads. Their sharp gazes seemed to have traveled through time and space and nailed Zhang Xiaofeng through the screen. Zhang Xiaofeng was stunned by their viper-like gazes. With a biting, cold, murderous look, Zhang Xiaofeng's heart was under great pressure, making him almost unable to breathe. As All Hawk's eyes narrowed, Zhang Xiaofeng's face flushed with blood. Luo Xian, who was next to him, was just about to close the notebook when he saw All Hawk's right hand grabbing at thin air. An key arrow seemed to appear out of thin air and shot out with his spiritual will. The Goshawk spacecraft, which was several kilometers away, exploded in the air. Not good. Just as Luli was about to make a move, she saw a flash on the screen. Zhang Xiaofeng was heavily leaning on the chair, his spirit extremely exhausted. It seems that All Hawk, in addition to strengthening the Science Key affinity system, must have also practiced a very advanced demonic martial art. He has stepped into 8-star. As soon as this news came out, everyone in the Windchaser squad on the airship fell into silence. Several newcomers secretly looked at Chen Ong, who was standing at the bow of the airship. They only saw that ever since Chen Ong had arrived nearby, he had been looking at the mountains and rivers below with an expressionless face. What the hell is he? The newcomers were just about to say something, but Lu Li's stern eyes forced them to shut up. In the newcomers' hearts, Chen Ong, who had never directly fought before, did not seem to be as dangerous as the terrifying barbarian on the screen. He even made them feel insecure. But now, the cold sweat on Lu Li's back was even worse than when he had just faced All Hawk's mental attack. He wished he could pull out a knife and place it on the newcomers next to shut their mouth. Chapter 355. The atmosphere was indeed a little strange. No one from the Windchasers spoke a word. Following that, a middle-aged scholar whom Luo Xian was very familiar with pushed open the hatch and walked to Chen Eng's side. Beside him was a mysterious woman wrapped in black muslin. Her exquisite figure made the rookies who lacked self-control involuntarily gulp a mouthful of saliva. At this moment, Dojienda's camp was already visible on the horizon. Lu Li and the other veterans sensibly stood up. They heard Chen Ong ask calmly, "Are you ready?" "Yes." Lu Li hurriedly nodded. He could faintly see some commotion on the ground from the corner of his eye. The airship was thousands of meters in the sky. With the technological level of the Great Tang, it was impossible to damage an airship at such a height. However, Samsara travelers had strange and ever-changing methods. A mere high altitude was no restriction to them. In fact, if not for Chen Eng's insistence, Lu Li would definitely not attack from such a high altitude. This meant cutting off their path of retreat, and it also meant that there was no way out. They would be trapped. No matter how one looked at it, this was a great taboo for Samsara travelers. Lu Li's back tensed up. He knew that as long as the chosen team wasn't a bunch of idiots, there was no way they wouldn't have noticed the airship. Chen Ong suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky in front of him. Lu Li looked over nervously and saw several ballistic missiles with long tails of flames flying out of the forest below at supersonic speeds exceeding Mach 5. With Lu Li's superb eyesight, she could even clearly see the color of the tail flames of these anti-air missiles. For advanced modern weapons, flying thousands of meters in the sky was nothing more than a blink of an eye. Chen Ong extended his hand and pulled out a steel longsword from Huang Cheng's waist. The longsword was sharp and tough. It was 3 feet and 1 inch long, and its material structure was the most ordinary crystalline steel. In the Great Tang, it was naturally a top-notch divine weapon. However, even after being appraised by the Lord, it was only an ordinary 1-star bronze longsword. On the bluestone square in front of the gate of Golden City, Orielhek watched Chen Ong flying off the airship with a sneer. He then turned around and said to Descendari with a smile, "How dare such a puny ant like Windchasers provoke us? How dare you fly over us by airship? How stupid you are! There's no need to look anymore. Although it's just a miniature nuclear warhead, weaklings like the Windchasers won't be able to survive it." After saying that, Ariel and Ku prepared to leave. When the missiles arrived at their prefabricated killing point, which was about 100 meters below the airship, without any warning, the 4 warheads exploded at the same time, and a dazzling sun appeared in the airship's position. The chain reaction reached a terrifying core temperature of 100 million degrees. In theory, it could destroy any life at the core. Then, the high temperature at the center of the nuclear explosion would directly act on the gas, and with the help of the expansion at the moment of the explosion, its own energy would be transmitted out. Radiation, high temperature, shock waves, and electromagnetic storms would form an impact force that would sweep through the entire space within the killing circle, vaporizing all man-made materials and traces of life in the vicinity. Although it was just a miniature nuclear warhead, it only reduced the killing area, not its individual power. Only powerhouses like Ariel and Ku would stare directly at the light radiation after the nuclear warhead's explosion. Even so, he could only prevent his eyes from getting hurt. He couldn't see through the disaster that was like the wrath of heaven. Descendari couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw the suns that suddenly appeared in the sky. The detonation of the nuclear warheads in the sky would undoubtedly create a lot of radioactive dust. For powerhouses like them, it naturally didn't matter. However, for the civilians living here, it was definitely a nightmare. It was a pity for the nearby population that was destined to be killed. Descendari suddenly felt that something was wrong at the center of the nuclear explosion. Descendari observed the changes in the energy of the nuclear explosion with his naked eyes, using the Vairocana Buddhism. He suddenly saw a huge hand that covered the sky and the sun grabbing the suns formed by the 4 nuclear warheads in the spectrum of the energy radiation. The huge hand that was several hundred meters wide gathered the energy released by the nuclear explosion. It was as if it was grabbing the 4 suns, and it was slamming them hard onto the ground. "Get out of the way!" Descendari shouted at the top of his lungs. He exerted all his chakra, and a mass of Buddha's light escaped from the crown chakra. It was like a pagoda falling down, protecting himself and Eril and Ku. At the same time, he desperately crushed the Garagon in his hand. A mass of thick and turbid Buddha's light set up countless pagodas in front of him, leading to the huge hand in the sky. The huge hand in the air pressed on the golden castle. The unparalleled energy that erupted from the 4 nuclear warheads filled every inch of space in the huge hand, gradually condensing the huge hand. This huge energy was confined in a limited space, but its power increased exponentially. The huge chain reaction energy was completely used to drive the next level of chain reaction. The abundant yuan qi in the air was ignited in an instant. When the Golden Castle, where more than a dozen members of the chosen team were located, came into direct contact with this destructive force, most of them couldn't react in time and melted in this endless light. It was as if a sun had fallen to the ground, burning with a blazing white flame. Although it only burned for dozens of seconds, it had already erased the entire Golden Castle from the ground, leaving only a clear palm print in place. The ground was in a semi-melted state, and a few barely recognizable human-shaped things were trapped in the lava. They were so black that it was impossible to tell the material they were made of. Luli looked at the prompt in front of her. The Windchasers killed a member of the chosen team. Rewarded with a 5-star bronze card and 5,000 points. Such messages were crazily flooding the screen, and in an instant, there were more than a dozen of them. Almost half of the chosen team was in it. Suddenly, they felt very confused. The rash newcomer opened his mouth wide, and he didn't even notice that his saliva was dripping out. He just trembled and said, This can't be real. How is this possible? They could see everything clearly from above. The huge light radiation from the nuclear bomb explosion had already spread in front of them, but they couldn't take a step forward. They were held in the hands of the demon-like man in front of them. It was as if he had grabbed the sun and smashed it down, leaving a palm print on the ground. Thinking of what he had said before, the newcomer who was dressed like a white-collared worker suddenly felt his legs tremble, and he couldn't control himself. This isn't a battle, and it can't even be called a crushing. This is a massacre. Zhang Xiaofeng exclaimed. The Buddha's first appearance of Buddha's palm? Luo Xian shook his head and denied it. Using a nuclear bomb to ignite light. This Buddha's palm is too destructive. This is a power that uses violence to destroy everything. It's better to call it the nuclear melting palm's world peace. Chen Eng's figure slowly descended. With the huge sun in front of him, no one saw how he landed on the ground. Standing on the ground that was flowing with lava and radiation, Chen Eng's expression was calm. He took a few steps forward and came before a charred human-shaped object. The human-shaped object, whose skin was stuck to the metal combat suit, raised its head with great difficulty. It revealed a face that was almost like a bloody skeleton, and it had no skin. Descendari, right? I didn't expect that a nuclear furnace would be easier to burn out Sariras. Chen Ong glanced at his agate body. Although it's a whole one. Other people's golden bodies are burned out in pieces, but you've been burned into a whole piece. It's worth studying. The golden body has been burned into agate, but it's still alive. It's very tenacious. It's also the first time I've seen a living Sariras. It's of great research value. I'll spare your life, Chen Ong said with a smile. Demon. Descendari uttered a vague Mongolian word from his throat. He stared at Chen Ong with 2 eyes that were almost burned into bloody holes and roared, Demon! Be scientific. Don't be superstitious. Chen-ong stood up in front of him. It's just a technology that can only throw a warhead out. It's better not to learn from others and play with nuclear weapons. What do you say when it comes to space technology? Looking at Oralhawk, who was crawling out of the magma in the distance, one had to admit that an 8-star powerhouse was indeed an 8-star powerhouse. He was wrapped in magma and had been hit by the impact of a dozen nuclear bombs. If it were anyone else, they would have been killed hundreds of times. However, his vitality was still strong, and his spirit was even surging because of the injury. Oralhawk's bloodshot eyes were filled with violence as he stared at Chen-ong. His body that was wrapped in magma suddenly stood upright, and the aura in his charred body seemed to be rising endlessly like a rocket. The chi that was spewing out filled every inch of space in the ruins of the Golden City Palace. It even shot up into the sky. From where the airship was, one could also feel the majestic pressure of the sea around Oralhawk. It was as if there was a tangible chi filling this space. It was as if Oralhawk's every move had the power to shake the entire world. To be continued. Chapter 356. Only a few breaths of time had passed since Oral and could dragged his heavily injured body to the Science Key, suppressing the space. Most of the members of the Wind Chaser squad couldn't even react before their knees softened and they almost knelt on the ground. It was as if a substantial aura was heavily pressing down on them, making it difficult for them to even breathe. The newcomers were even more unbearable and were already lying on the ground. Zhang Xiaofeng struggled to resist the pressure and said while holding his breath, "That guy's strengthened scion bloodline is getting stronger and stronger. The more he is injured, the stronger his fighting will and strength will become. We are in big trouble this time." He still wanted to say something but was stopped by Luli, who signaled him to look back at the battlefield with her eyes. They saw Chen-ong walk around Descendari's crippled body and walk towards Oral and Ku step by step. The Scion's huge aura blocked in front of him like a wisp of remnant ash. At this time, Oral and Ku howled like a wounded lone wolf. He used his claws to tear apart the magma-stained skin and flesh on his body and howled towards Chen-ong. Like a wild wolf, Oral and Ku crazily rushed over. His claws were condensed with powerful ki, which was enough to tear apart any expert's flesh and blood. He grabbed towards Chen-ang's throat, his 5 fingers tightly hooked as if he was going to pull out his throat. The ki condensed on his nails was sharp and swift, filled with a murderous aura. "White tiger biting corpse," Luli said in shock. Oral and Ku is training in the burial scripture. Oral and Ku's howl was like that of a wolf or a tiger, full of ferocity and tyranny. He used all his murderous aura and crazily wanted to tear apart Chen-ang's throat, as if he had lost all reason. After Lu Li's reminder, the other veterans of the Wind Chaser squad could faintly see that Oral and Ku's pounce, claw, and tear apart had a tiger-like aura that could not be dispersed. "Go to hell! Go to hell!" Oral and Ku crazily roared like a lone wolf in a desperate situation. He didn't distinguish between friend and foe, and didn't care about his own safety. He only wanted to tear off a piece of flesh from Chen-ang's body. This kind of craziness of mutual destruction allowed him to display his combat strength several times over. Even experts who were a level higher than him would be suppressed by him due to the taboo of getting injured. His angry roar was like thunder, capable of robbing the courage of a coward. Amidst the distorted rays of light from the hot lava, Chen-ong could be seen stabbing his sword into the ground and clenching his fists. Amidst the crazed roars of Oral and Ku, he took a step forward and threw a punch. Oral and Ku's tiger claws were wrapped in a fierce aura. They met the punch head-on and broke it in half. The broken forearms pierced through Eril and Ku's chests, piercing right through their chests. Oral and Ku took a direct hit to the face, and half of their heads caved in. The skin and flesh on his face were crushed, and his body was sent flying back into the magma. Half of his head was smashed, and his body could only twitch on the ground. White brain matter flowed into the magma, sizzling, and a barbecued aroma wafted out. Smelling this smell, Luo Xian's face turned deathly pale. She bent over and almost vomited under the airship. I don't want to eat brains anymore, Zhang Xiaofeng mumbled. Luo Xian, who was beside him, heard this, and her originally straightened back bent again. I have a few words to entrust to you, to those foreign visitors who are still alive. Tong Guan took out a handkerchief and handed it to Chen Ong to wipe his hands. At the same time, he calmly said to everyone on the ruins, You have all seen what happened today. I have no goodwill towards you. If you don't want to die, then unite and kill me. At the very least, you have to preserve your lives, right? You should all know that hiding is useless. Either you wait for me to come knocking on your door, like today, and kill you like dogs, or, when the time comes, you will be eliminated. So, no matter what hatred, disputes, national righteousness, or schemes, unite. Chen Ong smiled and said, First live. Such indifferent and ruthless content, although Chen Ang's face was very calm, even with a graceful smile, as if everything he had just done was as natural and poetic as plucking flowers and breaking willows. But in the eyes of all the reincarnators, living, dead, and half-dead, there was a trace of indescribable ruthlessness. Chen Ang's gaze seemed to be interrogative, but it also seemed to be encouraging as he looked at those who were still alive in the ruins. Everyone looked at Riley and Ku, who were still struggling on the brink of death. They watched as Riley and Ku stood up once again. Even though half of his head was deflated, the chi on his body was still the same, and it was even more ferocious and powerful. Scions are worthy of being one of the most expensive bloodline enhancements in the space. Zhang Zhongheng sighed. They are really a fighting race. Their vitality is unexpectedly strong to such an extent. The closer a scion is to death, the stronger they are. Luo Xian's lips slightly moved, but he still opened his mouth and said, Now that his life is hanging by a thread, I am afraid that his battle strength has already broken through 9 stars and touched the gate of God, the terrifying realm of immortal will. Don't look at his dying appearance. As long as the battle intent in his heart does not disappear, he will not die even if he is beaten into cells. Of course, as long as the enemy disappears, he will immediately die. So the best situation is to quickly leave and avoid fighting. He will die by himself. Lu Li said with a trembling voice. But a strong storyline will never run away from a battle. Luo Xian smiled bitterly. Perhaps this is why we reincarnators are always inferior to the strong storyline in martial arts. This is bad. Auriel and Ku slowly straightened their heads, raising their heads and looking straight at Chen Ong. Even though they had forcibly broken several cervical vertebrae, Auriel and Ku still clenched their teeth, proudly and slowly raised their heads, their eyes meeting Chen Ang's indifferent gaze. Azure dragon weeps blood. 4 spirits are ominous. Auriel and Ku roared, their hair standing on end. The chi that soared into the sky caused his broken body to swell. His hair roots were covered with a layer of golden light. The veins on his body were like giant dragons, and his muscles swelled like iron. His vitality and chi carried the last of his will to fight, causing his hair to soar into the sky and be dyed golden. Super Saiyan. The members of the Windchasers were alarmed. At this time, even the most ignorant newcomer was shocked speechless, staring at Auriel and Ku in the arena with their mouths agape. Looking at him gathering almost all of his life force and radiating an unparalleled strength, this powerful strength even caused a change in the weather. The remnant clouds in the sky within a radius of tens of miles quickly receded, as if they were being blown away by a strong wind. Hundreds of miles, even thousands of miles away, people were shocked, raising their heads to look in this direction. This is 9-star willpower. There is a very powerful key. That is a genius squad? Don't underestimate them. Auriel and Ku roared, buried heaven, buried earth, buried heavens, pooh. An arrow of blood pierced through Auril and Ku's dead head, nailing it to the ground. The fine steel sword pierced through the head, and the corpse knelt on the ground. Chapter 357. The azure sharp sword was stabbed into the ground at an oblique angle, and the smell of sulfur and a faint smell of blood reverberated in the air. From the moment Auril and Ku transformed into a Super Saiyan and his near-death willpower breaking through to 9 stars, to when Chen Ong flicked out the steel sword, no one could guess what had happened next. Everything that had happened today had overturned their traditional views. Almost when the Windseeker squad was about to lose all hope, as if an unprecedented showdown was about to take place, Chen Ong pulled out the sword that was stabbed in front of him. Then, things were quickly resolved at a speed that no one could have imagined. Auril and Ku's corpse knelt in the magma. His badly mutilated face was hideous, and he died with everlasting regret. His corpse swayed slightly before falling face first into the magma. Chen Ong said calmly, "This matter is over." He glanced at the people who were still lying in the magma, looking at their terrified and trembling eyes. Chen Ong sighed and said, "Out of responsibility for everyone's lives, I have a rule that I must tell everyone. When I speak, don't interrupt me." He glanced at Auril and Ku's corpse and said indifferently, "Otherwise, I'll have to interrupt you too. In this regard, my methods have always been unpleasant. Take the monk on the ground away." He turned around and said to Tong Guan. The airship slowly landed on the ground, and immediately, someone came over to carry Dai Sendari away. Lu Li and the others disembarked from the airship, trembling with fear, and stood timidly at the edge of the huge handprint. There was a slight commotion among the lucky survivors of the Windseeker squad. They were terrified, but they didn't know what to do as they looked at Chen Ong and the commanders of the 2 factories behind him. "Go back." Chen Ong gestured in a gentle tone. The reincarnators of the Windseeker squad widened their eyes, looking confused and expectant, like a group of harmless rabbits. "I mean, you can go." Chen Ong smiled and explained, "You can seek refuge with other forces or find a place to hide. Go. I won't keep you for dinner." He gestured for them to leave. "Tell those who come from the same place as you that their time is running out. If I don't act now, I'll go looking for them one by one. What happened today will happen again and again. That's not good. It's not good for either of us. I'll lose time and you'll lose your lives. Also, I wish the world peace." A skinny man who had been hiding in the magma climbed up quickly. He didn't even dare to look at Chen Ong and disappeared into the ground. After a few breaths, seeing that Chen Ong didn't do anything, more people escaped. There were 5 or 6 of them. Lu Li and the other Samsara travelers of the wind-chasing team watched from the side. Their lips moved as if they wanted to say something. But when he saw Chen Ong standing at the side with a smile, he immediately lost all his courage. After about 15 minutes, Chen Ong turned around to look at Lu Li and the others. He said leisurely, "As your value hasn't been recognized by me. There were too many people who escaped just now. My words don't carry much weight. Go after them now and kill as many as you can. Just take it as a test for you. Let me assess your abilities." "Yes." Lu Li didn't even dare to ask a question. She led her teammates and chased after them. Their minds were in a mess. Even when they were chasing, they couldn't concentrate. Lu Li saw that there would be a big problem. She quickly stopped and ordered, "Zhongheng, use the intelligence network to gather information about the Windseeker squad's escape. Luo Xian, help analyze it. The rest of you, get your spirits in order. If you run over like this, you'll just be sending yourself to death." The veterans gradually came back to their senses. Their eyes were filled with fear and wariness. They couldn't imagine that the Windseeker squad, which was more powerful than the wind-chasing team, would be annihilated just like that. Chen Eng's nuclear palm technique and the sword strike that killed Auril and Ku made them not dare to have any thoughts of disobeying him. If they had to use a word to describe the impression that Chen Eng's attack had left on them, it would be Brilliant heavenly might. How can there be such power in this world? This is just a 4-star Tang Dynasty world. Can the martial arts of a yellow attribute world be so powerful? Zhang Xiaofeng cried out. That palm, it's the 8-star mysterious world's Buddha's palm. Even the original Buddha's palm isn't that terrifying, right? Do you still think that this world is the Tang Dynasty? Old Hu said with a sad face. This is the world where the He Sure by war took place. 7 teams fought to the death, dragon vein mysterious. Other than us, the weakest team here is also a 7-star pinnacle team. Divine martial, beauty, and truth are not to be trifled with. Storyline characters. To have such a powerhouse who could single-handedly annihilate the Windseeker squad, it's really. Luckily, we're in Yang Guang's camp. Lu Li didn't say anything. He looked at Zhang Zhongheng and Luo Xian with a serious face. He was investigating the traces of the other members of the Windseeker squad who had escaped, but he couldn't hide the faint fear in his heart. The mission that the Lord God had arranged this time could no longer be called a scam. They were practically buried in the ground. A mutated world with a 4-star base level had produced a 9-star hidden powerhouse, also entering the mission and triggering the changes caused by the team battle. Thinking of this, he wanted to curse out loud. What the F***ck is the He Sure by war. The special effect of the item should only be triggered when entering the moon world. How could it be effective in this world? A mere gold-grade item, the Little Holy Grail, could F***king start a 7-team battle. The pockmarks on the Lord God's face aren't pockmarks, they're scams. The enemy has 6 opponents who are far stronger than them in a team battle. On our side, we have a 9-star nation-breaker powerhouse who can single-handedly annihilate a team. He's a terrifying hidden character. Now that he recalled his previous audacity, Lu Li almost felt lucky. Fortunately, the Windseeker squad had normal values and acted cautiously. In the previous storyline world, they often missed out on some benefits because of this, but now, it could only be said that in the Lord God's space, the winner would never be the one who benefited the most, but the one who could survive. Leader found the whereabouts of one person. Zhang Zhongheng sent good news. They should have escaped separately. Old Hu, Xiaofeng, you and I will go and deal with him first. Zhongheng, Luo Xian, you continue to search for the traces of the others. Inform me if there's any situation. Remember to be cautious. The others, listen to Luo Xian's command. Chapter 358. Beside the rolling Yangtze River, under the cover of the Green Mountains, the river flowed to the east. Shushan was covered by a thin mist, and there was a small boat leaning against the river. In this touching world where Ba Mountain and Shu River merged into one, Ning Daoqi stood at the bow of the boat, smiling at the monk who sent him off. Wisdom, why are you worried about me? This trip to Jiangdu to see Yang Guang is a wonderful thing to do from the beginning to the end. To be able to see the Sky Demon and discuss about the past and present is also a great wish of mine. Wisdom does not make me happy, but I am afraid that I have long forgotten the years and the months and years, and the joy will not return. Zen Master Ji put his palms together and mournfully said, Today the great calamity of the Central Plains is imminent. Yang Guang is about to overturn the world. Taoist brother is modest and self-restrained, a person who has deeply mastered the Taoist doctrine of maintaining silence and emptiness. You should be free and unfettered in the world, forgetting everything. Today, he has been implicated by us and has no choice but to return to this great whirlpool of hegemony to face Yang Guang. I'm afraid. Ning Daoqi stroked his beard and said with a smile, Born after the heaven and earth, we know the beginning of the heaven and earth. Dying before the heaven and earth, we know the end of the heaven and earth. There is life, there is death, there is a beginning, there is an end. The effect of life for the dead, and the test of death for the living. This is the way of nature. What is there to be confused about? To be able to meet Yang Guang and share his understanding of life and his pursuit of the heavenly Tao, I'm overwhelmed with joy. I've even forgotten the worries of life and death. It's a pity that we have fallen into depravity and have our schemes in our hearts. I'm afraid it's difficult for us to enter the eyes of the sky demon. You've been taught the carefree art of outer heaven. You've been cleansing your genuine chi day and night with the special pearl. Gradually, you've achieved the wonders of being a celestial being. You're far away from disregarding life and death, success and failure, right and wrong, right and wrong. You've transcended all desires, and you've seen everything in the world as one. You don't know whether you're me or not. You're only separated by a piece of paper, so why should you be afraid of the extraterrestrial devil? Master Zhihui untied the ropes that tied the light boat and pushed it open for him, saying, I'm burdened by the world of mortals, I can't go with Tao Brother. After this farewell, if Tao Brother is happy to come back, we'll chase the wind and moon with Tao Brother and live in seclusion in the forest. If I'm unlucky, I'll go to Jiangdu with DXIN, Dao Xin, and Jia Xiang, and then we'll fight with Yang Guang. Ning Daoqi, who was on the boat, shook his head and sighed. Why bother? Brother Zhihui, I have a word for you before you leave. Those foreign mutants can't be trusted. Wisdom laughed out loud. Even if they gave us the Carefree Beyond chapter and swore to fight against Yang Guang together, I know that they have evil intentions. They are like eagles watching wolves and eagles watching eagles. I can't entrust them with anything important. Brother, don't worry. As long as we are still around, we won't let them harm the King of Qin. The small boat has already gone far away. Ning Daoqi's silhouette is only a small dot in the eyes of the Master of Wisdom. The monkeys on both sides of the Yangtze River are still making noises. The light boat has already disappeared into the thin mist. 100 miles away, a tall young man suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction that Ning Daoqi had gone. A short and fat man next to him sneered and said, as expected, these plot characters have never trusted us. But that Ning Daoqi is really scary. In just a month, he has mastered the Carefree Beyond and entered the 8 stars. Plot characters have an advantage over us reincarnators. For a plot character like Ning Daoqi, his willpower has been honed to the peak in the Tang dynasty. He also has decades of accumulation. Suddenly coming into contact with high-level martial arts, it's reasonable that his combat power has skyrocketed under the accumulation. If it wasn't for you lending him the Heaven Crystal Green Bead, he wouldn't be able to enter the 8 stars even if you beat him to death. Fatty said flatteringly. I thought it was a simple plot world. I didn't expect the background of the 7 teams to be so deep. Although the Prodigy team is not as strong as us, their team leaders Air Riley and Ku are also quite strong. They actually died without being able to fight back. If it's really like what the survivors said, the Wind Chasers have a scary character. Fatty said expectantly, I hope that Ning Daoqi can use his life to find out something for us. Now that all the teams are training their plot characters, it's a good idea. Even if the information is wrong, we can still exchange them like pigs. If the information from the Prodigy team is correct, we can let them take over and create an opportunity for us. The leader of the Shen Wu team revealed a playful smile. But will things really go as smoothly as they think? I feel that these plot characters might not be able to be our chess pieces. On the other hand, we are the chess pieces in their eyes. The leader of the Shen Wu team suddenly laughed. Now this is interesting. At the peak of the battle, bathing in the blood of the strong and intoxicated in victory, this is the pursuit of the strong. The path of the weak will not be able to break through the gate of God. If we can bathe the 6 teams in blood and slaughter the heroes of Tang Dynasty, I'm afraid that will be the time when I completely break through the gate of God and advance to the 10 stars. Half a month ago, the survivors of the Prodigy team went to the other teams and brought the news of Chen Ong to them. It shocked all 5 teams. Other than the Shen Wu team, who was the strongest and could still control themselves, the other 4 teams were all shocked. Teams like the Truth team and the Universe team were not stronger than the Prodigy team. As for the Red Beauty team and the Viper team, even if they could defeat the Prodigy team, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. However, the Wind Chaser team only needed one powerful fighter to crush the scene. He killed Air Riley and Ku like they were little chickens and wiped out the Prodigy team with a single palm. The four teams were so scared that they forgot about their differences and discussed working together. Only the strongest team, the Shen Wu team, remained aloof. Although the four teams and the Shen Wu team had a tacit understanding, they did not trust each other at all. It was almost impossible for them to work together. The only way for them to work together was to build up the momentum, exchange information, and push forward some plans together. For example, nurturing the plot characters, the three Grandmasters, the evil King Song Ke, and so on. They were planning to use them as cannon fodder. They spared no expense. Many martial arts from the advanced worlds, the few major martial arts schools, such as the Yuan Qi School, the Mind School, the Training System, the Spell School, the Illusion School, the True Spirit School, the God Advent School, the Massacre School, and even the martial arts theories of the Master God Space martial arts experts, as well as a large number of natural treasures, were fed to the plot characters without any regard for money. In addition to the dragon vein fate that flourished in this world, the martial arts flourished. In just a short month, there were peak fighters like Ning Daoqi who had stepped into the 8 stars. Their combat power soared, and as time passed, these powerful fighters would become more and more powerful. Now, with every passing day, the 5 major forces would become more powerful. The major forces, who had almost lost all hope in the face of Yang Guang's demonic might, were like drowning people who had grabbed onto the last straw, desperately digesting these benefits. In this month, the atmosphere in the world was strange. On the surface, it was very calm. In fact, as the Sui army pacified the 4 sides, the world regained a bit of peace and tranquility. But in the dark, the wind and clouds were surging, and the undercurrents were surging. Chapter 359. Chen Ong stood on the rocky beach beside the Yangtze River. The edge of the reef had been eroded by the river water until it was as sharp as a blade. 2-0? It accumulated under his feet and penetrated into the river like the teeth of a dog, tearing out a snowflake-like wave. The captain of the universe team, Jin Zhonghuan, stood opposite Chen Ong with a solemn expression. The shadow of the river water slapped under Jin Zhonghuan's feet, but it passed through his body and slowly headed east. This was actually a 3-dimensional projection. He was clearly in Goryeo, but the universe team had clearly restored every detail of Chen Ang's body from thousands of miles away and projected it here. This is the mysterious expert of the Windchasers? Jin Zhonghuan asked in a stern voice. Yes, I had the coward who was lucky enough to escape compare with him. It is indeed him. Standing outside the projection, Pu Xuanxi, who was looking at him with a smile, said, "But Appa seems to be thinking too much. My demonic plants have already infected him, but he didn't even notice it. It doesn't seem to be the performance of a 9-star expert. Could it be that those Mongolians are too useless, so? Pu Xuanxi, keep your cleverness to yourself. I have met this person before during a mission. He is not the kind of person who is overly famous. The bloodline of the Scion race has been strengthened in his hands, and he can even fight with experts who are higher than his star level. An expert who can kill him is not someone that your stupid brain can predict." Jin Zhonghuan asked coldly, "How much longer before Ning Daoqi arrives here?" The Shenwu team said that they will arrive in half a day. The ghoul unit is also in position. Appa, should we? Pu Xuanxi enlarged the scale of the projection. A group of hideous humanoid monsters dozens of miles away from Chen Ong appeared on the projection. They were floating under the abdomen of a monster that looked like a ray, hanging upside down like bats. These monsters, which Pu Xuanxi called ghouls, had curled up deformed bodies, and their skin was as pale as a corpse. They seemed to be very afraid of sunlight. Occasionally, One of them would be pushed to the edge by its companions and come into contact with a thin ray of sunlight. It was as if it had been splashed with sulfuric acid, and it let out an ear-piercing scream. These monsters were not a specialty of any storyline world. Instead, they were created by the Cosmic Team using the Stone Demon mask from the world of JoJo's Amazing Adventures, which could create vampires. In this world, they were created using Goryo's martial arts experts as their bodies. After being injected with the vampire virus in the world of Night Legend and modified by the Umbrella Corporation's biochemical technology in the world of Resident Evil, they retained their martial arts experience and removed human emotions. Even though these biological weapons only had a lifespan of 24 hours due to the effects of the genetic disease caused by the conflict of genetic redundancies, they still possessed extremely terrifying destructive power and were the trump cards of the Universe Team. Among these ghouls, there were also some exquisite biochemical versions that were meticulously created. They were embedded with the demons of the Greatsword world, the aberrations of the alien world, the perfect blood of the Legend of the Night world, and the genes of the magical animals of the Harry Potter world. They possessed even more dangerous lethality and special abilities. It could be said that most of the Universe Team's strength was reflected in these biochemical technologies. Jin Zhonghuan pondered for a moment and suddenly made a decision. Cui Jinghui, we're not waiting anymore. Control the ghouls to attack now. But Captain, it's still daytime. If we use the ghouls now, we'll lose another curtain of darkness scroll. Why don't we wait until Ning Daoqi meets the target? It'll be dark by then. Cui Jinghui said hesitantly. Cui Jinghui, are you questioning my orders? Jin Zhonghuan asked sternly. Understood, I'll order the ghouls to attack now. Cui Jinghui replied with cold sweat all over his face. Cui Jinghui. Jin Zhonghuan looked at him coldly, and the look in his eyes made him shudder. Don't think that you have the right to question my orders just because your substitute ability is very suitable for commanding ghouls. I can give you abilities, but I can also take them away. Understand? Cui Jinghui trembled all over and replied with extreme fear, Yes, Captain. Dozens of miles behind Chenong, the giant stingray monster suddenly woke up from its deep sleep. It flapped its wings and began to move forward, which caused a commotion among the ghouls hanging in its abdomen. However, a humanoid vine-like shadow appeared on the back of the stingray. The shadow's tentacles pierced into the brains of the stingray and the strongest ghouls, and the commotion quickly subsided. The stingray did not fly high, but it was very fast. In a few breaths, it had shortened the distance between it and Chen Ong by a quarter. At this time, the projection of Chen Ong finally moved. In the projection's energy perspective, it showed that blue magnetic true energy was spreading rapidly along the magnetic field lines of the Earth. True energy threads as thin as spider webs quickly covered the Earth under the magical plant's senses. With Chen Ang's body as the hub, the magnetic true energy absorbed the magnetic force in the air and grew visibly stronger. In Chen Ang's senses, countless chaotic and manic consciousnesses filled with anger, hatred, and resentment were rapidly approaching. In the feedback of the magnetic field, a huge flattened organism carrying a dense number of parasitic organisms swept across the air and approached his position. In the space team's base, Cui Jinghui was sweating profusely as he controlled his substitute. His substitute ability was very special. Even from 1,000 miles away, it could be used perfectly. Coupled with the parasitic control ability of the substitute, it was practically the perfect commander for the space team, which mainly relied on biochemical technology. The Vanguard has begun contact, Cui Jinghui said calmly. Pu Suansi. Jin Zhonghuan ordered coldly. Got it, Appa. Pu Suansi revealed a cold smile and looked at Cui Jinghui with disgust. Suddenly, he turned into a shadow and pounced on Cui Jinghui. Dozens of ferocious black shadows did not wait for the skate to stop and pounced down from its abdomen. Suddenly, a mass of dense, solid shadows burst out from their bodies. The dark canopy from the heroes of Might and Magic World shrouded an area of 10 square kilometers in complete darkness. The tentacles inserted into the brains of the ghouls trembled violently, causing the expressions of these ferocious monsters to become even more ferocious. With a shrill howl that did not sound like a human's, the life force of the ghouls was instantly squeezed dry. A few ghouls turned into dried corpses and fell to the ground. Their souls, wrapped in the howl, pounced on Chern Ong like a banshee. Black magic banshee's howl. Go to hell. Pu Xuanxi's soul appeared in Cui Jinghui's substitute. When the banshee's soul was just a few steps away from Chern Ong, he completely detonated this black magic. The banshee's soul melted in the howl and turned into a venomous curse that wrapped around Chin Ang's body. At this moment, in a situation that no one had expected, Chen Ang's right palm struck out like a blade. A power filled with impurities. Chapter 360. The magnetic true qi wrapped around Chen Ang's right palm, and the sharp true qi turned into a saber light that was beyond imagination. 21. It passed through the magnetic field at an incredible speed. This speed had exceeded the speed at which neurons could transmit electrical signals. When the visual signal was transmitted to the brain by the eyeball, the magnetic palm knife had already appeared in front of them. The magnetic qi of the positive pole turned into a palm knife, and it was accelerated to the extreme in the magnetic field of the negative pole. Pu Xuanxi's soul was attached to the corpse of the ghoul, and she could only see a bright light flash. This was the light-speed hand knife. The knife light and the magnetic hand knife touched the ghoul at almost the same time, but the ghoul's visual organs transmitted the light signal to the brain, and the brain continued to transmit the signal to the substitute. During this process, the magnetic hand knife had already swept through the body of the ghoul that had pounced first. Jin Zhonghuan only heard Pu Xuanxi let out an inhuman scream, and then she turned into a shadow and bounced out of Cui Jinghui's body, falling to the ground. Her spirit body flickered in the illusion, as if her soul would dissipate at any moment. The other members of the universe team wanted to help her up, but as soon as they got close, they screamed in fear. Pu Xuanxi's spirit body shed tears of blood, and a huge knife cut across her face, almost splitting her head into two. She was like a goldfish out of water, weakly opening and closing her mouth to breathe, and her red eyes were filled with unwillingness and despair. Save me! Someone recognized Pu Xuanxi's mouth shape. But everyone was scared out of their wit. Cui Jinghui, who was standing to the side, knelt on the ground powerlessly. Beads of blood seeped out of his 7 orifices, meandering across his face, and then dripping drop by drop onto the ground, seeping into his clothes. After a few breaths, no one dared to approach them. The light of life in Pu Xuanxi's eyes gradually disappeared, and then the Lord God prompted, "One member of the universe team eliminated, team battle score -1. The rookies of the universe team next to her covered their mouths, trying their best not to cry out. Jin Zhonghuan looked at Pu Xuanxi's corpse in shock. Pu Xuanxi's body gradually withdrew from the spirit body state. After recovering, there were no wounds on her face, only tiny beads of blood seeped out of her 7 orifices, sliding across the intact skin of the corpse and dripping to the ground. On the side, Cui Jinghui's body was twitching as he struggled. He had stubbornly survived, but from his unfocused gaze, everyone in the universe team knew that he had lost his sight. Captain, Captain! Cui Jinghui's hands scratched the ground, leaving streaks of blood. Jin Zhonghuan had no choice but to say, "I'm here, Cui Jinghui." Cui Jinghui crawled over to where Jin Zhonghuan was. Jin Zhonghuan hurriedly stopped him, but he did not expect to see the projection next to him halfway. Cui Jinghui's eyes suddenly focused, and he turned his head to stare at Chen Ang's projection. It was as if that projection was the only thing left in the world, and it sent chills down the spines of the rest of the universe team. "Cui Jinghui, can your eyes see?" Jin Zhonghuan asked. No. Cui Jinghui turned around in fear and shook his head frantically. My eyes have, what? Jin Zhonghuan asked sternly. What's in your eyes? His voice was flustered and exasperated. It was as if he had completely torn off the mask of a calm and collected gentleman. He sounded like a lunatic. Cui Jinghui did not say anything. It was as if he had seen a living devil. He slowly turned his head to look at Chen Eng's projection, and Chen Eng's projection was also smiling at the universe team. Cui Jinghui was completely controlled by fear. His whole body was trembling, and he ignored Jin Zhonghuan's stern warning. His pale face was covered in large drops of cold sweat. And when Chen Eng's projection looked at Cui Jinghui and the other universe team members, it was as if it had a life of its own, and it glowed with a different light. Chen Ong smiled, and the other veterans of the universe team shuddered, and someone even shouted in fear, "He's alive! He's alive! He's here! He killed Pu Xuanxi and Cui Jinghui. Turn it off!" Jin Zhonghuan turned around and said sternly, "Li Zichuan, turn off the projector. Lu Ranxi, disconnect the demonic plants." No one responded to his words for a long time. He looked up at Lu Ranxi and saw that she was trembling all over. Her spirit had completely fused with the senses of the demonic plants, and she came to the riverside where Chen Ong was. She saw a strand of yang magnetic sword qi sweeping past the yin magnetic field under Chen Eng's feet. The strand of sword qi kept accelerating in the intertwining of the yin and yang magnetic field, and finally surpassed everything. Countless corpses of ghouls fell from the sky like dumplings. Some were already corpses, and some were still bearing their fangs and claws. Their faces were ferocious, and then they became corpses in the process of diving down. Lu Ranxi saw that some ghouls had fused with the genes in their bodies and grew predatory organs. They wanted to suck Chen Eng's blood and qi, and then suddenly died. Some ghouls had fused with the demonic plants and changed their life forms. This time, Lu Ranxi could personally feel that the sword qi had silently cut through all the cells of the demonic plants and ghouls, causing tens of thousands of plants to die in an instant. The biochemical ghouls with strong vitality and abnormal life forms were constantly changing and evolving endlessly. From the large ghouls that had fused with the demonic plants in the forest, to the small viruses and bacteria in the air, they were all cut, and killed by the sword light intertwined with the yin and yang magnetic field. It was only a moment, but in Lu Ranxi's mind it was extremely long. She suddenly heard Jin Zhonghuan's voice, but she was already too weak to respond. She had witnessed everything with her own eyes. Her spirit had been completely penetrated by the sword intent in the magnetic sword light, and her soul was almost destroyed. She could only open her mouth and then fall down powerlessly. Jin Zhonghuan saw bright red beads of blood oozing out of Lu Ranxi's 7 orifices. He immediately took 2 steps back in fear and shouted crazily, "Beast! Bastard! Come out if you have the guts! What kind of man are you to hide your head and show your tail?" Jin Zhonghuan vented crazily. He looked up at the other members of the universe team and saw that they were so terrified that they couldn't control themselves. He suddenly became furious. "You bastards, if you dare to have this kind of expression again, I won't need him to do anything. I'll kill you first." From the corner of his eyes, he saw that the projection of Chen Ong was still standing there. He roared, "Li Zichuan, do you want to die? Turn it off." "I've already turned it off," Li Zichuan sobbed. He curled up in fear in the corner, took out the projector's switch, and showed it to Jin Zhonghuan. "I've tried to turn it off long ago, but that thing isn't a projection." Jin Zhonghuan saw that the other members of the universe team had extremely horrified expressions on their faces. Their eyeballs were protruding and bloodshot, and they were looking at him with extreme fear behind him. Jin Zhonghuan turned around and saw Chen Ong standing behind him with a smile. He raised his hand and said, "I have a sword, please judge it." "Please." Jin Zhonghuan replied woodenly. In the next instant, the saber light sliced through the void. Chapter 361. Jin Zhonghuan frantically ran forward. His whole body turned into a shadow as he ran through the forest. 21. A terrible wound extended from his right rib to his left shoulder. White bones could be seen through the wound, but he didn't even have the time to bandage the wound. He only cared about running away frantically. Don't ever think about this blade of mine. Every time you think about it, it's equivalent to facing this blade again. Chen Eng's words suddenly appeared in Jin Zhonghuan's mind. Before he could shout, "Don't!" an indescribable blade light appeared in his memory. Then, Jin Zhonghuan's body visibly shook. It was as if an invisible blade energy had appeared from an unimaginable place. Blood splattered, and another 2 inches deep wound appeared on his back. Looking at the other parts of Jin Zhonghuan's body, there were dozens of large and small blade wounds on his body. "I can't think about it. I can't think about it. I'll die if I think about it. I'll die." Jin Zhonghuan roared crazily. He used all his strength to run forward, hoping that extreme exhaustion could make him forget the nightmare in his memory. He had already understood that the projection was not Chen Eng's real body, but the Chen Ong in Cui Jinghui's memory. Cui Jinghui saw Chen Eng's appearance and remembered him in his heart. Chen Ong could come back to life in his memory. If he hadn't reacted at the last moment and killed Cui Jinghui with one strike, he would have died under Chen Eng's blade. Even so, he was hit by half of Chen Eng's blade. Not only did it almost cut him in half, but that half of the blade was also engraved in his consciousness. As long as he recalled it, he would once again face the moment when Chen Ong slashed him. "I can't dodge, I can't lock onto the trajectory, I can't see where it came from, I can't predict where it will end." That was a blade from the gods. Jin Zhonghuan could not control his consciousness to trace back to that saber. Just as the memory of that moment surfaced, he felt that hair-raising sharpness again. This time, 2 thoughts appeared in the saber light, and another bone-deep wound appeared on his body. "I can only withstand 5 thoughts at most. After 5 thoughts, my injury will be fatal. Moreover, I have a premonition that as long as I recall that saber light for more than 10 thoughts, the remaining half of the saber will appear again. This time, the person who remembers it is me. Unless I kill myself, I will definitely die." Jin Zhonghuan tried his best to avoid recalling that blade light. He was also analyzing it with all his wisdom. "Right now, I definitely can't meet up with my teammate." Although they didn't face that blade directly, they more or less remembered some information from that moment. "If I'm with them, that blade will probably be completed immediately and kill us all. Even if I only communicate with them, there will be the danger of my mental imprint becoming complete. Just one slash, just one slash. He's not a 9-star at all. That bastard from Team Prodigy." Jin Zhonghuan's heart was overflowing with grief and indignation. "He's a powerhouse who has broken through the barrier." This time, 5 thoughts appeared in the memory of the blade light, and it killed Jin Zhonghuan. Forcing himself to forget that memory, Jin Zhonghuan knelt on the ground. The wounds on his body were already numb. The strengthened perfect human pillar bloodline was trying to restore his life. The flesh around the wounds wriggled, trying to heal, but when they stuck back together, it was as if time had reversed, and the wounds immediately returned to their original state. "This is the cells remembering the wounds." A female figure landed in front of Jin Zhonghuan, stroked his wound and said, "To be able to make the cells of the people in the pillar remember such an injury, and even fear healing. Zhonghuan, what kind of expert did you provoke?" Li Zichuan and the others' expressions of fear. Even if the Lord God was in his heart, he wouldn't be as fearful. "What did you encounter? Why must a person like me, who knows nothing, save you?" The woman took out a handful of blood-red liquid, opened Jin Zhonghuan's mouth, and poured it down his throat. Then, she lifted Jin Zhonghuan's clothes and tried to use her will to erase the memory of the cells around the wounds. As soon as she touched the wounds, the woman felt a blade light in her consciousness. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The woman supported her head that seemed to have been chopped off and cried in pain. What the hell, what is this? Fortunately, with external help, the human pillar's powerful cells finally had a chance to fight back. Together with the woman's mental magic, they slowly erased the will of the wounds on Jin Zhonghuan's body. After a long time, other than the wound from the right rib to the left shoulder, which the woman didn't dare to touch, the other wounds finally healed. Jiang Taiyan, if you didn't come, I almost died. Jin Zhonghuan touched Jiang Taiyan's face and smiled bitterly. What happened to you guys? Why did that bitch Pu Xuanxi die just like that? Why was Cui Jinghui killed by your substitute? They don't dare to tell me, Zhonghuan. You have to tell me. Jiang Taiyan questioned. We encountered a very terrifying enemy. He borrowed Cui Jinghui's body and wanted to kill us all. Pu Xuanxi, Lu Ranxi, and the others are all dead. Taiyun, promise me, if you see a very resplendent blade light blossoming from my body, you will kill me. Jin Zhonghuan pinched her hand and solemnly repeated, You must kill me. Understand? Taiyan? Answer me, he asked loudly. Understood, Taiyan said while crying. Jin Zhonghuan looked at Taiyan's painful eyes and sobbed. It's good that you understand, otherwise we will all die. I was too arrogant, Taiyan. That person is someone that our team can't deal with. No, it should be said that he is an existence that all of us samsara travelers together can't deal with. If we want to survive, all the teams must unite. We must even unite this world to oppose their storyline experts. When facing that blade, Taiyan, I only thought of you. I want to live with you. Jin Zhonghuan cried bitterly. I want to live with you. He stuffed a stone arrow into Jiang Taiyan's palm. Taiyan asked in panic, What's wrong? Zhonghuan? What's wrong? Why did you suddenly say such things? Jin Zhonghuan looked at the illusion of Chen Ong in front of him that only he could see. He hugged Taiyan tightly in his arms and raised his head, letting his tears drip on Taiyan's body. It was cold. Taiyan looked at Jin Zhonghuan's determined eyes in fear and felt the cold tears on her skin. Then, under her incredulous eyes, a blade light appeared on Jin Zhonghuan's body and his head fell off. No! Jiang Taiyan cried crazily. She bathed in Jin Zhonghuan's blood and held his head. She almost had a mental breakdown. A familiar voice sounded in her ears. 6 thoughts have passed. It's useless. Taiyan, kill me. Unexpectedly, the more I don't want to remember, the clearer it is. No. Jiang Taiyan cried bitterly. You can still live, Zhonghuan. You are a pillar person. As long as you have the life essence of a vampire, you can still live. Don't look. Taiyan, don't look. Jin Zhonghuan's blood blocked Jiang Taiyan's vision, but it could not stop the blade light and the figure in her eyes from becoming clearer. The scene of Chen Ong smiling and waving the blade seemed to appear clearly in front of her again. Use this stone arrow that can create a substitute and give it to the Shenwu team. My only request is to let you live. Let them make a contract with the God Lord. Let them use this gold level 8-star tool as the price to let you live. Tell them that without the stone arrow, everyone is dead. Look into my eyes, Taiyan. Remember this moment, forget everything else. Just remember that the two of us are together. Don't look at anything, don't think about anything. You must remember me. Remember that I love you. Jiang Taiyan cried and nodded. In her eyes, there seemed to be only Jin Zhonghuan's eyes in her arms, and she could see that Jin Zhonghuan's eyes were only looking at her. The shadow of Chen Eng's smile beside her seemed to be fading away, diluting in her memory. Perhaps only love could make her forget this blade. Only the closer I am to death, the more I understand my true feelings. Taiyan, don't take revenge for me. As long as you live to reach the 9 stars, you will find a way to resurrect me. You must forget the hatred. At this moment, I only allow you to remember me. Forget everything else for me. Forget. Taiyan cried and nodded. Standing in front of Jin Zhonghuan, The shadow of Qin Eng's smile finally waved the blade. His life and shadow disappeared together. Jiang Taiyin felt the head in her arms lighten, and the last of her tears flowed out. Chapter 362. The Universe Team is done for. The captain of the Viper team, Stephen, sighed. They've only lost their captain and a few main forces. Most of them are still alive, and the management structure is intact. Why do you say they're done for? Grim twisted her slender waist like a beautiful boa as she climbed onto Stephen's back. She stuck out her tongue and asked with a sweet smile as she stuck it out beside Stephen's ear. Stephen stroked Glenn's head with a cold smile and suddenly reached out to strangle her neck. Brainless idiot! Do you think you're stronger than Jin Zhonghuan? Do you think you're smarter than me? Glenn didn't know why she had angered this moody demon king. She struggled and said, "No, I didn't. Jin Zhonghuan, who's 100 times stronger than you, is dead. I, who's 10,000 times smarter than you, is sure that the Universe Team is destroyed. Why do you still dare to act so slutty? What you should do is fear." He looked into Glenn's eyes as if he wanted to imprint the brutality and madness of this moment in her mind forever. "I've always admired your stupidity, but you have to learn to fear the strong. You're no stronger than an ant in front of the existence that killed Jin Zhonghuan. Even I'm afraid. How can an idiot like you not care? Because of your stupidity?" Stephen smiled cruelly. "Then remember the fear of this moment." Seeing that Green's pretty face had turned purple and her eyes were filled with fear and panic, Stephen finally let go of her neck with a laugh. "Stephen, you scoundrel! Beautiful women are meant to be loved, not used to vent your fear." A blurry shadow was projected from the ring in front of Stephen, and said to him with a smile, "You Middle Easterners who treat women as slaves have no right to say that to me, Ben Hazm." Stephen sneered. "Who in the Universe Team joined you? So blind. Don't you know that the Truth Team is as cruel to non-believers as the Inferno? Mr. Jean has become our brother in the church. We're like a family to him. All right, Stephen, we don't have time to probe here and there. Even the arrogant Shenwu team has lowered their heads to seek cooperation. You should know how bad things have gotten. Our remaining 4 teams might all die in this mission." Hazm said solemnly. "I don't know. Li Zaizuan, who sought refuge with me, performed a frontal lobe surgery on himself in order to survive. Now, he's completely useless. He doesn't remember anything." Stephen sighed. "Frontal lobe surgery? Is it that stupid surgery that Westerners invented to cure neurosis? He removed the frontal lobe of his brain? He could really be so ruthless to himself. He must be very quiet right now. Quiet like a plant." Stephen made a lame joke and said coldly, "I don't know what forced them to do such a cruel thing to themselves, but I feel fear. They must know something, but they don't even dare to think about it. When I saw Li Zaichuan stab the awl into the upper part of his right eye socket and destroy the frontal lobe of his brain, I took advantage of the situation. I felt fear. Don't tell me you don't have this fear, Hazm. I have it too. Although Jin Zaiwan wasn't as ruthless as Li Zaizuan, he also sealed his memory. I don't know much more than you do, but Jin Zhonghuan and Ariel's fates tell us what will happen to us if we don't work together." The Shenwu team took in the most members of the Universe Team. Do you know what the consequences were? When the survivors of the Universe Team gathered together, a terrifying incident occurred. In the end, one of their official members was severely injured. In the end, the captain used all his strength to save the survivors. So that's what happened. Stephen's expression changed. He knew how terrifying the captain of the Shenwu team was. Otherwise, why do you think the Shenwu team would take the initiative to cooperate with us? Hazm sneered. Stephen pondered for a moment and asked, "The vice-captain of the Universe Team, Jiang Taiyin, also joined the Shenwu team?" "Yes. She carried the most important relic of her lover, an 8-star gold-grade item. Jin Zhonghuan thought that it was the key to breaking through the situation. When Jin Zhonghuan died, she was there. She watched as her lover was killed, but there was nothing she could do. I think this woman is going crazy. But with that item, she became a member of the Shenwu team under the protection of the contract, Hazem sighed. The Shenwu team is going to stop Ning Daoqi from fighting Yang Guang. They are using the power of the storyline characters in their hands. It can be said that they are putting in a lot of effort to nurture those storyline characters. They want us to contribute our power too. The Shenwu team suggested that the captains of the 4 teams form a leadership group to plan and use our resources more rationally, nurturing the power that we can control and influence. That's normal. Since the enemy is so terrifying, then Ning Daoqi is no longer a one-time item to be wasted. He is a very precious resource. Did the Shenwu team inform you? Stephen raised his head and asked. Next Thursday there will be a meeting of the 4 teams. It is also a meeting of the Li family, Song family, Fortress Invincible, Sihong Jing Mosque, Buddhism, Taoism, Turks, Goryeo, and other anti-sway forces. The Shenwu team wants to control the remaining forces of the 3 teams, Goryeo, and geniuses without any bloodshed. They want to take control of these forces. Hazem curled his lips in disdain. This way, as long as they get rid of the mysterious enemy of the Windchasers, they will be the winner. Stephen sneered and said, They want to use that person to suppress us. As long as we don't want to die, we will have to pay the price. But we are not to be trifled with. Hazem sighed. The blurry figure slowly disappeared in front of Stephen. Stephen stood up from his seat and looked toward the south. He was not as ignorant as he claimed to be. He also knew that Hazem was hiding some things, such as the mysterious expert who stood by the Yangtze River and the blade that could not be looked at directly. Playing with the projection device in his hand, Stephen said in a panic, A peak 9-star martial arts expert who might even be able to break through to the next level? Our luck is really not bad. Chen Ong stood on the huge carcass of the giant ray. The remains of the ghouls piled up like a small hill by his feet. Chapter 363. The dark canopy of the heavens had yet to dissipate. Chen Ong looked up at the night sky and smiled. Actually, the easiest way is to split open this darkness. That universe team's trump card looks scary, but it's not a threat to you. He gestured to the ghouls at his feet. The weakness of these monsters is too obvious. In front of sunlight they're almost vulnerable. There aren't many people who can break the dark canopy of the heavens. This is a level 4 spell after all. Even a martial arts powerhouse would need a 7-star level to break it. Plus, the universe team has a lot of tricks up their sleeve. All in all, it's still very troublesome. Lu Li smiled bitterly. If it's in the dark, these monsters are even more troublesome. They're a serious threat to us. Lu Li explained. Do you know why I didn't split open the darkness and instead went through so much trouble to keep their corpses intact? Chen Ong looked at the bloody corpses with interest. He felt his scientist's heart stirring again. He didn't wait for Lu Li to answer. It's not easy for the universe team to survive until today. If they didn't die by my hands this time, Jin Zhonghuan would have died sooner or later. A team without a complete scientific research system used a biochemical weapon that they couldn't even figure out when they were enemies of a dimension. I don't know what's wrong with them to be so stupid. Don't they know what it means to provide material for the enemy? Chen Ong sneered. Lu Li didn't know what to say. The universe team was definitely not stupid. In fact, if it wasn't for the so-called Tang Dynasty world being so confusing, the universe team wouldn't use biochemical weapons so casually even if they were beaten to death. But who knew that the Tang Dynasty world would have an unscientific plot change like the primordial demon that descended from outer space? God weapon Xuanqi dimension of an unknown world line. Great gods like Nuwa and Pangu were all aliens from advanced civilizations. Primeval Demon was the strongest combat scientist with the most advanced technology in the entire universe. He hunted down the remnants of civilizations and their mother planet that had been destroyed. He accidentally crossed over to this damned Tang Dynasty world with Nuwa. In the end, the alien scientist Nuwa from the God of War civilization sealed the primordial demon who had been severely injured while traveling through space and time. She even left behind the peerless martial art, the God of War catalog, which was used to modify an alien's battle body. She also sent the biological weapon, the demonic dragon, to guard it. So all the martial arts experts of the Tang Empire, who had broken through the void, had reincarnated as aliens and fought against the alien invaders of the primordial heavenly demon clan in the divine weapon plane? So the martial arts forces of this world were not only responsible for providing soldiers to the aliens, but also responsible for monitoring the sealed primordial demon? This was very Great Tang. Who would have thought that the Great Tang, which seemed to be a world of martial arts, would have such a sci-fi background? Considering that Huang Yi had written sci-fi wuxia works such as The Great Swordsman and The Interstellar Prodigal Son, Lu Li was unable to refute such a ridiculous setting. Therefore, it made perfect sense for the strongest combat scientist in the outer planet, the primordial demon, to control Yang Guang to start the war with the Heshabi in an attempt to replenish the energy of the high-energy crystal Heshabi. If this was not the background of the war with the Heshabi provided by the Lord God, Lu Li would not have believed a word of it. So on the surface, the war with the Heshabi was a battle for the fate of the artifact in China, but in fact, it was initiated by the alien combat race to recharge the energy crystal. It was related to a small-scale conflict between two advanced alien civilizations? Luo Xian commented, "That's **T. At this time, as the leader of the Windchaser squad who was unfortunately involved in the interstellar war between the God of War civilization and the heavenly demon civilization in the divine weapon plane, Lu Li could only pinch her nose and walk on the pirate ship. She carefully echoed the combat scientist, Chen Ong, and said, "The cosmic team's biochemical weapons are actually very powerful. Most worlds can't crack their genetic encryption for biochemical weapons. My existence is already bullying those country bumpkins. Now, I'm afraid I'm going to break the balance of the war with the Heshabi this time?" Chen Ong sighed. A twisted plant slowly grew in front of him. If Lu Ranqi was here, she would recognize it at a glance. This was her contracted creature, the magical plant. However, the magical plant Chen Ong had restored was its most primitive form and also the form with the most potential. The magical plant frantically plundered the nutrients and genes of the ghoul's flesh and blood where it had taken root. A large number of gene fragments were extracted and provided to Chen Ong. The genetic code encrypted by the cosmic team was almost non-existent to Chen Ong. A large number of gene fragments that they thought were superior were thrown away by Chen Ong like garbage. As the gene fragments were restored and complete, if Jin Zhonghuan, the captain of the cosmic team, was here, he would probably be shocked speechless. This was because the gene reconstructed by Chen Ong was very close to the complete form of these gene samples. Xenomorph, Night Demon, Vampire, Perfect Blood, Werewolf Virus, Greatsword Demon, T-Virus, Progenitor Virus, and so on. The modifications of the cosmic team that thought they were clever were directly thrown away by Chen Ong like garbage. If Jiang Taiyan, the scientist of the cosmic team, was here and saw Chen Ang's thoughts and methods of cutting, dissecting, and gene modulation, she would probably die of shame. The difference between two people was as big as the difference between a chimpanzee and a human scientist. In front of Chen Ang's biochemical research, Jiang Taiyan's intelligence was not much higher than that of a chimpanzee. The accumulation of knowledge was about the level of two paramecia. The form of the magical plant was constantly changing. A large number of nutrients were consumed, allowing the half-fungus, half-plant magical plant to grow rapidly. Some of its organs rapidly evolved into the form of an animal. Some insects like Hufeng crawled out of the reproductive cavity of the magical plant, flapped their wings, and flew out against the wind. Luli watched as these little things quickly killed all the animals and plants around them and transported them into the digestive cavity of the magical plant. The insects and small animals were quickly covered by the mycelium. They were digested, providing energy and nutrients to the magical plant while contributing their own genes. A large number of gatherers were produced quickly, plundering all the resources around them. Luli even saw a few frog-like gatherers crawling out of the magical plant and jumping into the river next to it to hunt for the aquatic creatures in the river. The magical plant also extended a tentacle into the river. In just a few minutes, Luli saw large creatures like tigers and leopards appear among the creatures hunted by the gatherers. There were also more and more types of gatherers. Even among the low-level gatherers like the worker bees, there were a few biochemical creations that posed a serious threat to the reincarnators. Luli could easily tell that these were only the basic gatherers produced by the magical plant. The biochemical weapons responsible for killing and protecting the magical plant had not been produced yet. Luli began to feel fear. He finally understood what kind of mistake the cosmic team had made.